Sunday. How's everybody doing? Hope you woke up in the good graces of the Lord. And you're doing good. Hope that you're enjoying your Sunday with your family. Maybe watching a ball game, having a little meal, and talking to the family about things. That's how we do what we do. Well, I'm gonna tell y'all, I just can't get used to winter, cause I doggone froze my butt off today getting here, and I doggone almost froze my butt off this morning. I'm just not used to this winter stuff. I don't know. I'm still wondering what happened to fall, but I guess it's November and it is that time of the year. Well, we got some things we need to talk about real quick. Hey, did y'all hear that the FBI got another laptop that belonged to Hunter Biden? That's two laptops. That's two laptops, not one, just two. Ain't nobody said what's on that laptop yet. We kind of already heard about the first laptop and some of the stuff that was on there, but we haven't heard anything about the second laptop. We just know it exists, and it seems that the FBI confiscated it in February, I believe. More to come on that. Well, people, my fellow Americans, it is less than 48. What is it, 48 hours? Is it 48 hours? Yeah, we coming down to the wire. Election day, Tuesday. It's going to be that time for us to get in line and let our voices be heard. Don't look like Nancy Pelosi and the administration going to come to an understanding about a stimulus package until the beginning of 2021. So if you had any ideas you're going to get a stimulus, and toss it on out your mind. We have to see about that next year. Well, being that it's almost that time, we about to elect either a new president or re-elect the one we got. I must have really touched a couple of nerves yesterday and a couple of individuals because they left a few comments like you're supposed to do, on the little inbox thing, and they had some things to say. Now, being that you can call this number right here, get at me, but you ain't got to call the number because in today's technology, you can still contact a person without having to pick up the phone. Example, Derek Atlas. He commented on the show, had a couple of things going on, so I want to correct Derek, Mr. Atlas, on a couple of key points in his comments. Now, Mr. Atlas says, but how could Obama do anything when Republicans admittedly blocked every effort he put forth? That's fact. Mr. Atlas, you are 110% correct. You are right. They did. But what you fail to realize is that when President Obama came into office, he was swept in by a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. Democrat Senate. Now, what did they spend their capital on? They didn't spend that capital on crime reform. They didn't spend that capital on instituting police reform. They didn't spend their capital on, let's say, opportunity zones in impoverished areas. They didn't spend all their capital there. They spent all their capital on Obamacare. Now, which then, because so many Americans were so dissatisfied with this, you can keep your doctor and you can keep your health care plan. and found out that that was a bunch of lies. So the American public decided that they need to balance the scales and prevent him from doing anything else that we didn't want him to do. So that is why you ended up with a Republican House majority and a Republican Senate majority. Merrick Garland, remember that? The reason why he couldn't, when Obama was in his last term or whatever, and they said that, he could pick a Supreme Court nominee, and he chose Merrick Garland, and nobody gave him a hearing. Why? Because, in my humble opinion, just like your opinion here, in my humble opinion, the reason why he couldn't pass that gentleman over to the Supreme Court is because of the way they got Obamacare passed. And they ended up with the Senate, and the Senate did not want to hear or consent or advise when it came to Merrick Garland. Now, your other question was, how has Trump uplifted me? See, that's the old head approach. The old head approach, okay? I'm not looking for him to lift me, the individual. If the country changes for the better, where there's low unemployment in the black community, if the country changes better to where there is opportunity. Now, I'm only speaking of the area I belong in, the area I'm contributing to. And that is, excuse me, and that is that if my community is lifted, then I'm lifted. See, in your world, from the way your question was posed, okay, you are looking at it from a direct individual perspective, okay? You're not looking at it as the whole. If the country is lifted where we have lower taxes, that lifts me. If the country is lifted to where we have lower regulations, that lifts me. Why? Because regulations, higher regulations, excessive regulations means that any entrepreneur has a lot of hurdles to get over. They have a lot of things that's going to be in their way through regulation that would not be there, making their job to either form a company or or to start their entrepreneurship may be a harder road. Now, if those regulations aren't there, it makes it so much easier, and so many more businesses can open, and so many more people become employed. So in saying that, it means that if the young cat down the street don't have a job, chances are he might want to break into somebody's house. But if the young guy down the street has a job, chances are more or less that he would ever want to break in somebody's house. And in lifting up, and like you said, what did Trump do to lift me? In lifting up the country, he lifts me as well. And he lifts you also, because your opportunities are more vast. Your opportunities are not narrowed. They're open. The chances of you being able to say, well, I'm working here, but I'm not making enough money, I want to go someplace else, that opportunity is there. Where at one point there were less opportunities. That's all I'm saying. I see Mr. Atlas says that this dude is crazy. No, I'm not crazy. I'm far from it, sir. What I am is a pragmatic individual that believes that if I'm on a boat and there's a hole in the boat and that boat is going down, why in the hell should I stay on that boat? They got life preservers, they got other boats. I might want to jump ship, as they say, and see what I can find going on over here. My suggestion to you is, don't go down with the ship. Okay, he also says, are you going to talk about how much Trump has been in bed with Putin and Russians? Again, you're listening to the mainstream media, Mr. Atlas, and you're not getting the point. Historically, okay, every president before Donald Trump was not actually in a position of authority to really push any Russian leader. The only one that you can recognize that actually did anything like that was John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Up until that point, we've been trying to get along with this passive aggressive type relationship with them, okay? And they've begun, they've been doing what they do. They grow just like we do, and they kind of, fall back just like we do. But here's the difference between what Trump has done to validate the point that he's not down for the Russians is that since Russia's main source of income is oil, when you lower the price of oil from when you lower the price of gas from $3 down to from 3, 4, 4.25, because I know you know about that. You done seen that just like I did. When you lower that gas price down to a point where it's $1.75, you stifle the ability of Russia to grow because now you've impacted their economy. This is a wise choice of approach. This was done when they realized that, Russia had something to do with the 2016 election, was involving themselves in it, and a few other miscellaneous things such as what's going on in the Ukraine, and a couple of other things where Russia has been, in essence, flexing their muscle. So in order to stop them from flexing without having to fire a shot, President Trump decided to attack their pocketbook. And no matter how you want to argue it, the numbers speak for themselves. They're not making as much. Their economy is low. The gas prices in their country is, let's just say, they're not doing that good, okay? And that's how you clearly can see he's not in bed with the Russians. He doesn't have any Russian connections. And I remind you, Mr. Atlas, we just went through a multiple year investigation of the president. And at the end of that investigation, we're referring to the Mueller investigation, where you had, I think it was 18 career Democrat lawyers looking this man's whole life up, investigating his family and everything. By the end of that investigation, he had nothing to report on the president. And believe me, as many people want him out, if they had just the smallest piece of a transgression, yeah, they'd brand him out on the rail. Now, you may want to say something about an impeachment. They had nothing to do with the Mueller investigation. The impeachment came from Nancy Pelosi trying to show trial the president, because there was no way the president was going to be removed by impeachment. We all knew this, and you should know this as well. Now, moving on from Mr. Atlas, we have a Mr. George Long Jr. And Mr. Long here says that in 2016, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were debating. Hillary brought up his income taxes. Donald Trump said, "If you elect me as your president of the United States, I will close those tax loopholes. Only I can do that." Well, he got elected president of the United States, and he damn sure haven't closed those tax loopholes yet. For the billionaires and millionaires, you said President Trump did everything what he said he was going to do. He didn't do that. I'm just saying. Mr. Long, look, I agree. We're not going to sit up here and say, honestly, that we can cover 100% of his promises, because I got you. That one right there, I've been kind of stuck on myself, because I've been waiting on the, IRS information to let us know that, some changes been made in that area. But here's the thing. What they say, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. The reason why I can say that is because of what I'm about to tell you. Okay, let's start at the point of accomplishments. Now, I know every now and then I throw up the idea that these economic zones, as if that's the only thing that this man has accomplished. Okay, and the only reason I bring it up like I do is because it directly affects my community. But there are other accomplishments. So let me run through a few of them with you. First president since 1970s to not get us in a foreign conflict or to start a foreign conflict. The troops are coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq. We've been in Afghanistan for almost 20 years, 19 years. Okay? It's time to come home. But every previous president before Trump decided for some odd reason they need to keep the troops there. Could it have been about money? I don't know. He seems to have North Korea under control somewhat. Now look, he has no control over these people building missiles, as to say. The only thing he can really do is let them know it's going to be consequences if you start off more nuclear tests. Okay. Now, that is what it is. Okay. We are not taking into consideration that he had 3 Middle East peace deals that he's arrived to: the Sudan, United Arab Emirates, and let me see if I can remember that other one. I think it was Jordan. Maybe I'll get back to you on that. But let's just say he's been nominated for 3 Nobel Peace Prizes. I ain't saying he's gonna win them, cause Nobel Peace Prize people are more liberal than anything else. But he's been nominated for 3 of them. And the list goes on. Now, first president I've known in a long time to put tariffs on China. I don't think Obama did it. I don't think Joe Biden did it. I don't even think Bush did it. All right? Let's just be real about it. These are direct accomplishments. You can't argue the point because it is what it is, Mr. Atlas. He got rid of NAFTA. Now we have the USMCA. That's better for the workers in this country. I can personally attest to that because when NAFTA came into effect, Mr. Atlas, I lost my job to Vavesa, Mexico. Okay, used to work at Lear Seat, and they closed my plant down, moved the whole damn job to Mexico. But here's the ironic part about it: when the transition was taking place between Michigan and Mexico, when they were trying to learn how to sew or make the materials that we were making, they were sending their rejected stuff back to us for us to repair and send back to them. But my job went to Vavesa, Mexico. So that's why I don't support NAFTA. I was directly impacted by NAFTA. So the USMCA, better deal. Even Joe Biden admitted to that. Trump signed a bipartisan. Now, Mr. Atlas, bipartisan means that one side agree and the other side agree. He signed a bipartisan crime bill. The First Step Act, remember that? The man has accomplishments, and for you to, call me crazy, I think you might have a couple of screws loose yourself, Mr. Atlas, if you don't sit down and actually research and quit listening to the mainstream media telling you that the president is with Russians and he's, in that case, I don't know, but quit listening to them people. Research the stuff for yourself. He signed an executive order for police reform. I don't think Obama did that when they was having all them issues in Baltimore. Don't think that happened. He ended that catch and release program that allowed criminals into this country, referring to drug dealers, rapists, kidnappers, murderers, just bad people, because they would catch them, they take their names, give them a court date, then they release them. You know the spiel. But did they come back to court? Not many of them. So they just running loose in the country, committing crimes left and right. But I guess Mr. Atlas would like those type of things to go on every day. But I guarantee you wouldn't like that if it personally affected you. And some of these things have personally affected a lot of us in our community alone. For example, MS-13. You mean to tell me you stand with Nancy Pelosi? Oh, they're human beings. You think MS-13 that goes off beats a young man to death with a baseball bat is somebody you want to support? Because not closing that border, not deporting these criminals is what you get. MS-13. We got Supreme Court justices that are not trying to legislate from the bench, but actually goes by the context of the Constitution. We're referring to Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and the most recent addition to the court, Amy Coney Barrett. I'm sorry, I got it all messed up. Amy Coney Barrett. Now, each one of the justices that I just named to you are in the line of, I guess you can say, Justice Scalia. They're strict constitutionalists. They believe in interpreting the law as long as the law goes within context of the Constitution. Some justices believe that they can make changes and alterations. I actually bring, for example, to you Chief Justice. Because of him, we ended up with Obamacare because he decided that he wanted to change the wording of the law. We all knew at the time that it came down that it was not a tax. That was not a tax. The mandate was not a tax. And then under our Constitution, you cannot mandate anyone to have to do something that is kind of against the Constitution. It's against their rights. That's why that got struck down. Tax cuts, they benefited the average family by about $2,000. That is, if you made under $73,000. That didn't happen under Obama. As a matter of fact, things went up under Obama. They went up under Bush. And I don't understand how you can weigh that out like that. He brought business taxes down from the highest in the world to one of the lowest, spurring economic growth and business investment. Now, the things I've just mentioned thus far raises up the whole, look, a rising tide floats all boats. So as long as we are going up with was reported 33.1% GDP, why do you have a complaint, Mr. Atlas? Brought companies back and did a whole lot of deregulation. Thing about that is, for every one regulation they want to add, they have to remove two. So regulations ain't really working out too good for you like that. He done built over 400 miles of wall, and the construction is taking place. And what really gets me about a lot of people, that, those are just a few accomplishments of the current president. And I can never understand why, if you hear that the other side is involved in some really shady dealings, you don't want to investigate that. But you'll sit back and listen to the MSM tell you that the president is involved with Russians after this man's been investigated more than any president we have ever had. And you still think, you really believe that this man is involved with the Russians? Yeah. Well, excuse me, I need to wet my palate. Well, we're going to move on from that silliness because, like I said, too many accomplishments, too many things to show that has been done. And I can go show you a whole lot of stuff that hadn't been done, but by the other side, but we ain't going there. I'd also like to take a moment because I slipped on this. Friend called me yesterday after the show, and they remarked to me that, oh, you're going to give a shout out to Rush Limbaugh, who's alive, but you know he's going through what he's going through. But you didn't say anything about Sean Connery. Okay, that is true, and I apologize for that because we lost a really iconic actor this week. Sean Connery died at the age of 90. And the man made a definite impact in my entertainment values because I have to say, I've watched a lot of his movies. And he's going to be missed. A lot of people are going to miss him. I mean, I'm going to miss him myself. He was a really good guy. I never heard too much bad about him. He seemed to what was strange to me is that the man always won for a lot of years. He was still winning the sexiest man, of the year award. They had him on the front of the magazine or whatever. And I guess even in his 60s and 70s, he was still receiving them type of accolades, which was cool. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, Sean Connery died at 90. I'm going to miss him. And, yeah, he was a cool guy. Anyway, we got this election drawing down on us. All right? And it looks like this situation with the second laptop is getting to be a little suspicious. Like I said, they haven't let out any information about it as of yet. They just acknowledged the fact that there was a second laptop that was kind of confiscated in February. Now, we also remember now that they have an open FBI investigation for money laundering with him and some of his business partners. Now, what seems a tad bit suspicious to me is that if this man, referring to Hunter Biden, was running around with his father in Air Force Two, and remember now, his father was in charge of the Ukraine, getting them guys on deck and, giving them money. They were going through that little issue with Russia at the time, Well, if he was riding around with his father to the Ukraine, and he was also going to China with him, and all these other countries, there's other countries that's been mentioned in this situation. You mean to tell me this man did not know his son was doing international business deals while he was on Air Force Two, traveling with his father? That's hard to believe. Even what's his name? Bobulinski, his business partner. Even Bobulinski, said, Tony Bobulinski, said that, Joe Biden is lying. Now look, you can be a diehard Democrat all damn day long. I have no problem with that. I'm a diehard conservative all damn day long, okay? But if there's a conservative candidate that has some really suspicious stuff going on, I'm pretty much not looking at that person like that, no matter how diehard I am, because something's not right with this mix. I'm not enthusiastic to vote for something that might end up being a problem. And I repeat to you, if you look at the structures, say for instance Joe Biden wins, okay? And they do by, chance find something negative in those emails, and the investigation goes that way, that seems to mean that the president would have to step down, and then you got Kamala Harris as the president. First black president, first black lady president, I guess. But that's a scenario. That's hypothetical. But it could happen. Only thing I'm saying is investigate what it is these people are doing, because these people are the ones supposed to run your world, run your country. And whatever that way they run it, they could run it good or they could run it into the ditch. It's still going to affect us. And just because you're a diehard Democrat or a diehard Republican, that doesn't make you immune to reality. Come on now. We need to understand that, everybody that say they good ain't good. I just find it hard to understand how you can investigate a president with all the millions and millions of dollars went into this investigation of President Trump. Millions of dollars. millions of documents were perused through, read up, and all these different things. There was a lot of FBI agents connected to this investigation. And common sense doesn't tell not one of you that if all of these things were deployed against the president and they could not remove him from office, they couldn't put him in prison, they couldn't, run him out of town on a rail, they couldn't do anything. He retained his power. That just lets you know that there are a lot of angry people wedged against the president and even this election. Do you know there have been cases of ballot harvesting taking place? That, you know what that is? You get rid of the guy you don't want, you keep all the guy you do, trash the other ones. You know what I'm saying? Or go to somebody's house, harass some old people, and make them vote the way you want them to vote. They just said that it was a lady that down in Texas getting paid thousands of dollars to ballot harvest. Okay? Now, I don't know if they caught up with her, but that was reported. This is the most hated president we have ever had. And the reason I believe he's hated is because he puts the system at peril. The system that look, at one point in time, you didn't have Democrat and Republican. You had them a Republican. That's what it was. Democrats and Republicans working together to jack us. Yeah, really, it was. That's not even, go back a few years and look. Seemed like to me, they were hand in hand. They was like, okay, you pass this bill I want, now I pass the bill you want. Not if it's going to affect the American people, if it's going to be to their benefit, or if it's going to be to their detriment. It's just whatever. It is what it is. And you can honestly sit here and tell me that President Trump is not dragging, if not just literally manhandling the Republican Party and bringing it to where he wants it to be. Because if that be the case, then you understand how all these accomplishments got done, even a bipartisan crime bill. Okay? You can understand how these things got accomplished. Not by all that soft talk and elegant wording. It was done by roughhousing. And sometimes you need a president that can do that. But you have people that's in the House of Representatives, they're leaders. You have people in the Senate, they're leaders. Okay? They're leaders of their communities, leaders of their states, and so on and so forth. But they don't look at it as just one area they're responsible for. Nancy Pelosi believes wholeheartedly that she runs everything because she is the Speaker of the House. She has a lot of power. I'll grant her that. But do you honestly think that this woman could not have taken $1.8 trillion, because that's what the president offered, $1.8 trillion to go out as stimulus, okay? You think she couldn't have took that? This woman wanted $2.3 trillion, and $2.3 trillion of that was to help out states, mainly the ones that are still closed, not opening up, help out with their pensions. In other words, bailing out Democratic states. How is that fair to Republican states? If they didn't go for it and they didn't try to bail out their states, why should, the country bail out other states? They're responsible for their own financial stability. And if you keep the state closed, can't get no revenue because businesses are closed. Your revenue drops off. So I agree with the president. We need to get the schools back open, get these kids back in there, and get everything under control, because if you live a life of fear, referring to Corona, because I had it, if you live a life of fear, you don't have a life. You really don't. Let's just be honest about it. Okay, back to what we were saying about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. I'm serious. I find it very difficult to understand how anybody can support this without being totally educated in what is really going on. Even to this very day, with the other laptop coming up, I still don't think it's fair for us to be able to vote and not know more about the situation. Mainstream media is keeping all the information hush-hush, and we all know this, because if it hadn't been for other venues that were able to put it out there, You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't know anything about it. This whole thing started a ruckus with, Facebook, Twitter, and Google trying to suppress that information. Now Joe Biden is running around complaining that Facebook is blocking his ads and causing his, I guess you can say, donations to slump. Presidential, his running donations to slump because they're blocking his ads. Well, the founder of Facebook said that they weren't going to be running any political ads a week before the election. And I guess that's kind of causing him a problem. But he done had all the help he needed all the way up until this point. So if your fundraising is down because of Facebook and now you're complaining, you have to remember now censorship has been going on for a while, but it's more intense on the conservative side. The conservatives have not a voice and they're just complaining about it because it's not right, especially at this time when we have so many things on the line. We're still trying to come out of Corona. We're trying to get the economy to grow. Excuse me. We're trying to get the economy to grow. We don't need a $4 trillion tax hike. Now, you can tell me all dang on day that if you make under $400,000, you won't be spending a penny more, but that's a bald-faced lie. Look, if you know anything, you should know corporations and businesses, well, not small business, but corporations and big companies do not pay those taxes. They send those taxes down to the consumer. When they put high taxes on gasoline, really? Seriously? Do you really think that that doesn't show up at the pump and then go into your pocket? When you look at your gas bill, your utility bill, and your bill is up through the roof, you think because they done threw these taxes on these companies and corporations, none of this affects you because they talk this old sweet game to you and spin it around. Oh, we're not going to mess with the middle class, but every day they messing with the middle class by all the things they doing out on the outer fringes. By raising taxes here, you make our economic security hard, okay, in some areas. So I'm not really for that tax and spend crap or either redistribution because I believe that redistribution is actually another communist or socialist idea. Take it from this guy and give it to this guy. Not this guy go earn it and he spends it with this guy. Not that. For some odd reason, I have no idea why. Some people think that capitalism is worse than socialism. Please make that make sense to me. Because socialism and communism done kill a bunch of people. A lot of people. You can say capitalism did too, but I don't think so. Capitalism has been the most helpful, generous philosophy that any country could take on. Communism, communism and socialism. Okay, Venezuela. You can look at our current. We only got to go back in time. We can look at our current situations with the countries that are here on the globe now. Let's refer this. Okay, communism. You got communist China over there, right? And you can go, if the information gets out, you can go and look at a lot of different stories of people over there, just the normal Joe Blow, complaining about the things that's taking place in that country, the lack of freedoms, okay? Now, if communism is such a good thing, I guarantee you Muslim Uyghurs over there would kind of disagree. They're being held in what you would consider re-education camps. I think they're concentration camps, but they say they're re-education camps. And, they stifle the ability of anybody to have a voice, to speak, and say anything against the government. Here, hell, some of you stupid ass motherfuckers go out and set fires against the government. Set the flag on fire. You know what I'm saying? Go break in windows and knock down people's doors. Loot their stores and take their goods. Try and do that shit in China and see what the hell happened to you. All right? But you rag on crack capitalism. You rag on the country and you say the country is unfair and so on and so forth. Look, the country has been unfair. It has been a monster to wrestle with. But this country has one good thing about it. It has always tried to redeem its sins. And I don't see a lot of people trying to get out of here, but I sure see a lot of people trying to get in. If we're such a racist nation and we're so bad, then please explain to me how in the hell we elected a black president twice. Because you have to remember now, black people are not the majority in this country. Caucasians are. And if they voted a black president in office twice, how racist can the country really be? Seriously, ask yourself that. These arguments that you use, just like Mr. Atlas, they're ridiculous and they're on their face. Because evidence has proven that there is a structure that has been put into place not to hold down the black man, not to hold down the Asian man, not to hold down the Hispanic man, but to hold down everybody, whites included. The structure has been shooken up. The game plan has been laid out for you to see it with your own eyes. And some of y'all refuse to see it. It's not that I can argue the point to get you to change your mind or anything like that, but if evidence don't get you to change your mind, what the hell else will? Just because you don't like Mr. Cheeto Man because he acts like a bull in a china shop, okay, good, fine. But don't you want results more than, this is not a, I guess you say, contest of who's the favorite guy, okay? It's not a personality contest. You want somebody that's going to run your country the way it should be ran. And all of this craziness about we're going to bring the country together. Joe Biden sat back and called black folks, young black folks, super predators, okay? How is that bringing anybody together? He just sat up here and, during the debate, pardon me, I had to stop saying that. During the debate, he even told the president to shut up. But you want to bring the country together, okay? He's the only one that could do that. I beg to differ, all right? That's the argument that always comes up at times like this. Election cycle. Oh, the country's fractured. The country's divided. Yeah. You got Democrats over here. You got Republicans over there. You got conservatives right here. You got liberals back here. Yeah, the country divided. We all have our own views about the way the country should be ran. But I guarantee you if something happened, we'd all come together real quick and rally around the center. Because you have to remember, before 9/11, then a lot of people like George W. Bush. All right, let's be honest. That hanging Chad thing, everybody thought that, the Democrats got cheated on that because of the hanging Chads, okay? Dumbest case I ever thought I'd ever see in my life, but they went to war over that. And then too many people liked George Bush after that. But what happened? We got hit at 9/11, the country rallied together, came together, and we was strong as one. Now, eventually we end up going on, but that's what we do. That is exactly what we do. So with Biden coming up saying he's the only one that can unite the country, how is he going to unite us? All at the bread line? All right. Is he going to unite us all at the eviction courts? Because you taking all my money ain't going to help me do a damn thing. You shutting down companies and corporations and industries. It's not going to help me. It'll unite us all for real. Because we'll all be sitting there singing the same song. Help, help. I need help. Excuse me while I wet my palate. Now, another thing I'd like to understand is if I'm looking at these rallies, okay? I'm watching them. I'm an avid watcher. I keep up on both sides, okay? And this is how I can say this. Kamala Harris gets more people at her rally than Joe Biden gets at his. But I digress. What I want to understand is this. If this man, referring to President Trump, if this man is so far behind in the polls, there's no way he can win, then please explain to me why whenever I see one of his rallies, is tens of thousands of people there. I guess you can't answer that. No. I guess all these people that's following the president, that's excited about the president, enthusiastic about the president. Now, guess what? Their enthusiasm for the president is justified because of the accomplishments that he has made, the things he's done already. So their enthusiasm for him is justified. Now, you have a politician that's been working in politics, never ran a business before in his life, been there 46 years. I'm sorry, but 100 cars in a parking lot does not match up to 15,000, 20,000 people standing in the airport. Okay, sorry, just don't match. And I don't understand where the theory came down that Joe Biden was the best man for the job. Look, the Democrat Party keeps recycling those old heads. Okay, it just seems to be some reason they cannot get these people out of the cycle. Joe Biden been there 46 years. You know the man like the back of your hand. You know what the hell he will do and what he won't do, and we know what he ain't won't do. Okay, he won't look out like he's supposed to. You got this idea in your head or policy preference that doesn't always fit with everybody. All right, because if you're coming in here saying that you wanna that you wanna take it from this guy to give it to this guy, then you're trying to do redistribution, of wealth. And I don't think it needs to be redistributed in that fashion. And a lot of people feel the same way as well. They do. Look at the states with the highest taxes, and look at how many people leaving them. California, New York, New Jersey. In New York, at one point in time, you couldn't even get a damn U-Haul. Why? Because all of them had went to Texas, fleeing high taxed areas. But you have a presidential candidate for the first time in my knowledge that openly admitted that they're going to raise your taxes. You can go look at their videos. That's why I say what I'm telling you, you can go research. So go research it. The man said, "Oh, if you vote for me, yeah, I'm gonna raise your taxes." Then he gets on the debate, says he's not gonna raise your taxes. But then we all know that he said he wants to raise the taxes by $4 trillion. How do you think that's going to affect the economy? How fast do you think the economy will go into a depression if we're coming out of a recession due to the coronavirus and the pandemic? How fast do you think this country will go into a depression with $4 trillion thrown on top of its back? And the removal of the Trump's tax cuts, the removal of those, because he said he's doing that on the first day. The removal of the Trump tax cuts, as well as reinstating a lot of the regulations that have been removed, making it harder for companies to start up or even to operate. Now, you have to also remember what he said he wanted to do. He also said that along with rolling back the taxes and everything like that and adding on the regulations and stuff like that, he also said that he was going to fix Obamacare with a public public plan, add on to it. Now, again, I repeat, it works for some people in some areas. That's not a doubt, because if it didn't, he wouldn't even bring it up. But it doesn't work for everybody as a whole. Kamala Harris said she wanted to get rid of all private health insurance, okay? She's a liberal. She's, been listed as one of the most liberal senators in the Senate. And she openly said that she wanted to get rid of all health insurance, even the private health insurance, okay? You think that if this man got elected, that couldn't happen? I mean, it's a lot of things that if you really investigate it for yourself, mainstream media can sit up here and tell you all kinds of bald-faced lies, but the intelligent individual goes and checks it for themselves. They don't actually want to be led around like sheep by the nose or whatever and then led to slaughter. It doesn't work like that for everybody. So with Mr. Atlas, asking me the questions he did, as well as Mr. Long, I appreciate it. I love the interaction. I really do. And that gives me a base to prove my point. I don't actually have to sit here and be rallying around and waving the flag for Trump all doggone day, because my thing is, I just only address it when it needs to be addressed. Because if you want to compare one president's accomplishments to another president's accomplishments, I can actually, show some things that the president I support has accomplished, where you just have platitudes. You can just actually talk about it, but it's not there. And you can say what you want to happen, but just saying that you want this to happen doesn't actually make it happen. And that's what a lot of politicians have been doing. They've been telling us what they want to happen, or they've been promising us what they're going to do, but they never do it. So my enthusiasm for the president is only because he's actually did everything he said he was going to do. And I just believe that if that's what your thing is, then you should actually want to vote for someone that will use your vote to your benefit. That's all I'm saying. We got to vote. That's just reality. There's no getting out of this. It's just like having to paying a traffic ticket. You got to do it. But you don't, but you should. And being that you should be totally educated in how to cast your vote. And why you're casting your vote. And for whom you're casting your vote for. Because if you're not educated enough to know these damn things, if you're not informed enough because the mainstream media and other very powerful organizations and businesses don't want you to know the truth, then you have to seek it out for yourself. You have to really put some leg work in, you know what I'm saying? Get out there, find out why somebody's supporting this candidate, or why someone's supporting that candidate, or why they're not supporting that one, or why they're not supporting this one. I'm supporting myself personally, my candidate. And I'm supporting John James for the Senate. Because I don't think Gary Peters has really looked out for Michiganders. I really don't. When he goes to the Senate and he votes 90, well, you remember I said when he's there, because he really don't show up that often. But when he does go, he votes Nancy Pelosi more than 90% of the time. Nancy Pelosi is a California liberal. She can't even deal with the situation in her own state. I mean, she got homeless, she has homeless people all over the place. She has drug addicted people all over the place. And I understand the weather's nice, but all them people out there are not living like that on purpose. Some of them have real massive problems. And if Nancy Pelosi really cared about her district, or even cared about her state, or even cared about the country, let's just be honest, she would have passed that stimulus package that her and the president been going back and forth about. Okay? If Gary Peters gave any care about Michigan, he would have just been in her office almost every day saying, Speaker, we have to do this, Speaker, we have to do that. That's not what he does, and that's not where he was. He couldn't be in the office every day. He's very rarely at his own office every day. But these are the people we elect. And then when they show us no accomplishments, just because their name, we keep voting them back? Okay, because there are a lot of politicians who keep getting reelected only on name recognition, not on accomplishments, on name recognition. You send a Kennedy back to the Senate in a heartbeat. Why? Name recognition. It's Kennedy. Now wait a minute. One of them Kennedys just ran. He didn't do too good, but at one point in time, the Kennedy family ran Washington, and we all know this because that was the only name you heard up in there consistently, back to back to back. The Kennedys. Okay. We know John F., the whole family, everybody. That's because of name recognition. And what we're doing, we need to get past some of those old habits, I guess you can say. We need to move on to a more American-centered approach. If you know your senator or your congressman or even your local politicians aren't dealing in the way that you want to be dealt with, and you think because, their name is there. I see it on the ballot every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. Every election cycle you see it. You get stuck in that idea. You start voting for that person just because of their name. You need to look for accomplishments like we've been doing. You need to have someone that represents you, that actually represents you. Not their interests, yours. And that's where we've been having a problem. Everybody wants to draw to the side and argue, fuss, and fight. But the reality is the politicians that we elect should work for us, not themselves. Now, we've had a very interesting day here. I've enjoyed it. Don't forget, we're having the shootout today at 5. It's been fun. You guys enjoy your Sunday. Go Lions. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
couple people that's still there. But anyway, in my opinion, my experience, they weren't doing good business at that time, and I had a gripe, and it turned into I was frustrated by not being able to have resource uh, to have resource or recourse to take care of what I needed as an entrepreneur
Mm-hmm.
in the city of Highland Park. And one thing led to another, and per legal advice and opportunity, I, along with uh, Judge Cynthia Latoy Miller
Mm-hmm.
and Ron Butler, um, who was a global trade negotiator for Chrysler, retired. They helped me put it together, and so I like to say they are humble and they give the credit to me, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without their advice, resource, and expertise. So they lent their name, their talent, and their Rolodex to getting the chamber started. So shouts out to them. So that's basically how we got started with that. But I just want to say, with this, back to what you asked me, why I wanted to do this,
Mm-hmm.
it was my personal uh, duty I felt. Having the broadcast, having an independent broadcast uh, company here where we are at WJZZ Cool TV. That's the studio we are in now. But we have other things going on in regard to cyber broadcasting. And I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to use the platform to give a voice to anybody who wants to come on and have an educated opinion or agenda. So it's namely for our incumbent elected officials who are brave enough to come on, and I'll explain that in a minute.
Oh
But
yes, because you know I'm gonna
yeah,
ask.
and then candidates who want office, and then stakeholders in general, block club leaders, any civic minded person, any stakeholder who feels a responsibility and a duty for where they live, and I want to use this platform, which is global. All you need is a smart device, so everybody that's tuning in now can share it, ask somebody else to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Just, it's to give a voice to the people, for the people, by the people, and that's what America, United States is supposed to be about. So this is my little contribution, this little seed I want to plant here to make this happen. And I want this to be a regular thing. It could be a weekly thing, it could be a monthly thing. So to all the leaders and the powers that be who end up watching this, and if you feel for whatever reason you want to support it and keep it going, we can fine tune it, make adjustments. But this could happen because not only should everybody get out and vote, especially within the next couple of days, definitely vote for this uh, election cycle for the president, but have an educated vote. Don't just vote for
Mm.
personality. Don't vote for because that's who your grandmama voted for. Be your own person. Uh, Vote in your own best interest, but know who you are voting for. Don't fall for the theatrics or the popularity or who spent the most money to come on and bombard you with commercials nonstop. Get really, if you're going to support somebody as an elected official, do your homework and invest that time and money, if you will, into knowing who you are supporting and putting into office. So that's my reason for doing this. And then, the All American Shootout. Anybody who noticed the graphic,
Oh yes.
anybody who noticed the graphic, it's a photo of an old patriot, a Minuteman with his musket, to the time back to when this country was founded.
Mm.
So it wasn't perfect when they found it. They had a bunch of issues,
It's still
constitutional
not
issues
perfect.
like slavery and different things like that, and what they did to the Native Americans and all of that. So that's part of our history. But the shootout portion is you have to figuratively and literally sometimes fight for what you believe in. Sometimes you
Absolutely.
have to stand up and fight verbally or physically or whatever the case may be. Like, as Americans, if we had another Pearl Harbor situation, I like to think that we all would forget about whatever the troubles of the day are and go and defend this land, this country, like any other country would do.
Right.
So that's what that imagery represents, and what I wanted to invoke is a sense of patriotic duty. And then we said return to grassroots politics, debate. I think it's healthy to argue and debate as long as you do it civilly. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to be the most experienced person in the room to be civil. But you do and you should know your policy, know your business if you're going to try to run for office and represent a community or represent a people or represent an office. I know for a fact we have elected officials in the Detroit metro area who cannot define the three branches of government, and they are elected officials, and then I'm personally fed up with politicians that don't do anything but spin. They won't answer a question directly. They won't commit. If they do, they apologize 24 hours later for what everybody knows that's what they meant to say. So it's just fake and phony. So, you don't have to be liked by everybody. You just have to do the job. Do the job the best you can. Represent all the people in your district, community, whatever the case may be, and let the chips fall where they're going to fall, and stand for something and stand on something. Don't be these flimsy. We need to get rid of all these flimsy, fake, phony, belligerent politicians. And everybody knows what I mean by belligerent politicians. You shouldn't be talking about people's family members. Not if that's not germane to the conversation. Just because you want to slander somebody or get out of answering a question that you're guilty of, then just the mudslinging can stop as far as I'm concerned. So this is why I wanted to do this. Regardless of how popular this is today, regardless of who shows up, at least the seed is planted and the die is cast and the shot is fired. So
Well, how was
let's
it?
do it.
How was it gathering participants to participate in the debate?
Well, first I want to apologize to all and any elected officials out there, any concerned citizen who didn't get an invitation, who know me personally, and I don't say, Roger, why you didn't invite me? It was a spur of the moment kind of thing. It came out of my frustration watching some debates and things like that. And people close to me said, well, you have a radio broadcasting thing. Why don't you get involved? Why don't you
do something about it instead of talking?
So I thought about it because being in business, you want to play it safe. You don't want to offend people and things like that. But the history of disseminating information, I mean, it weighs on me sometimes that I want to tear my television up some days when I hear and see the stuff that I hear. So I said, okay, let's do it. So we had only a week, I think, to
literally a week and a
invite.
day.
Yeah. So some elected officials and leaders, I don't have a way to track you down and invite you, but we did the best we could to invite the leaders we know. And I'm not going to name names, but I'm just going to say how I feel. A lot of elected officials and some known candidates, in my opinion, choked out, chickened out, because they wanted to make different demands like, oh, well, can my staff be there? No, you have to know what you know and go for yourself. If you expected to be a leader, you need this team to get, work, but not when you're coming to do something like this.
Right.
You should know your business for the most part. This is only a little 3-hour thing, and most people will only be in here for a few minutes. So I'm pretty sure if they know their business, they can do it on their own. You shouldn't need people to help you research and all that. And then they wanted to say, well, I need to know who else is going to be in the room. I don't want to be attacked or ambushed. So that's why you are here on the inside to moderate this thing, to keep it civil, keep it on topic. So we want to say out to everybody viewing that'll watch this live or later, we're not going to tolerate people to come in for the photo op. So if the only reason you come in here,
Okay, so let's do with the rules then.
okay,
let's
you want
let's
me to say it or
yeah, I
you
want
say
you to tell everyone the rules of engagement. If you're planning to come in and you are going to participate in the debate, you'll be here with myself, Dr. Napanji Thomas, as your moderator, and there are some rules to participate. So Roger Pennsylvania is going to go over the rules for us.
Okay, when you arrive, we can only have, due to COVID and due to the size of our studio, we can only have 3 guests in at a time. So 4 total, including yourself. So I'll be stepping out in a minute to let others come in. And each person will have ample amount of time to speak, depending on how many people are out waiting to speak. So you may be asked to leave when your time is up. It's going to be based on when you arrived, but you will be allowed to rotate back in if you care to stick around.
So you can, so a person can be in here, have their 10, 15 minutes, and if they're still around and they hear a topic that they want to chime in on, they can come and
or
somebody,
if it's
they'll
a
tap
particular
somebody
person,
out and they
right.
will tap in on the conversation.
Based on how long you've been in here.
Okay.
And based on what the people who they want to engage, because we are running live with text and things like that. We're taking phone calls. The number is posted.
The
So
number
everybody
is
out there,
313-355-6018. If you're listening in and are not able to see us visually, you can still call us at 313-355-6018.
and we are live streaming as we speak on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and Periscope. And this will be archived in its entirety, bloopers and all. This is uncensored, so you can express yourself. If you know, in heated moments, somebody might let a profane word slip or whatever. Don't worry about it. It's real. So do what you have to do. Say what you have to say. So that's how we're going to rotate people in and out. When you're in here with Dr. Thomas, please answer the questions directly. Do not try to spin. We will not tolerate spin answers. So
I will kick you out.
Right. If you don't want to answer, just say, I pass on that question. But
plead the fifth. You can plead the fifth. I'll go for that one too.
Right. And if you you can pass on an answer or two, but don't be here for the photo op. You have to engage. If you're just sitting here being a post, smiling in the camera, after a couple of warnings, we will politely ask you to leave. So this is no spin zone.
I might not be polite,
no
depending.
BS. And just to start it off, I'll let people know. I mean, it's one thing to be professional and all of that, but you could say bullshit if you want. Like, you could tell somebody that they're full of shit. You could tell them they're a liar if you know they're lying.
As long as you don't call them out their
Right.
name.
I mean, you know
so
what I'm
there's
saying?
not going to be no SOBs and sons of all that.
Right.
So
It's free speech. That everything here is constitutional. It's free speech, but it has to be civil. So that's the thing. You know, we understand that people get heated up, but anyway, those are the rules of engagement. And we will ask everybody to sign our registry for prosperity's sake, and so we know who was here and all of that good stuff. So with that said, I'm going to leave out so we can invite a couple other guests in.
Okay.
And unless our host on the outside can send in
2 or 3 people.
Well, I'll come back periodically. Okay. I'll come pop in and out, but I want to make sure the people who were gracious enough to show up, that they get some time. So,
and they were actually on time. Now,
right.
We did ask people to sign up and have time slots for them to come in. Some people did do that.
Right.
So I'm very excited to see who we're going to have join us first.
And just have them introduce themselves and their affiliation. Come on in.
I
So
hear someone
I'm
knocking at the door.
I'll be back, and thank everybody for watching. And please text us, call us, and give us your ongoing feedback and comments as we go.
Come on
in, take a seat.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. You can say it loud. So I see someone that has a Cannabis Caucus shirt on, and is that tied up underneath that mask?
What's up?
What's your name?
Ben.
Ben.
Ben Todd.
Yeah. I was like, is that Todd up underneath that mask? I don't know why I always call you by your last name, but I like your last name. Todd is
Actually,
one of my
that's
favorite
middle
names.
name.
Is
I
it?
did it as a way when I don't know if you remembered. I used to have like a little program.
Are you having trouble over there already?
I'll get it.
I don't want you to, because this is so. Everyone, I'm going to go around the table, and I'm going to start to my immediate left, and we're going to have this gentleman introduce himself, and then we'll go around the room, and we will start our conversation.
All right, my name is Jim Johnson.
Hi, Jim, and you are from?
I've worked on multiple levels of government, actually.
Okay.
Yes. Currently, I am working in the United States Congress, House of Representatives.
Okay, doing what?
I'm a constituent services coordinator.
For?
Brenda Lawrence.
All right.
With that being said, my thoughts are my own. And not Congresswoman Lawrence.
Okay.
Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. Okay, great.
Okay, and next we will have
Ben. My name's Ben Todd, and I've been an activist for a while. Been involved in activism. I've hosted a few radio shows in the past, podcasts as well, and yeah, just generally involved in politics and the political scene.
And how long have you been involved in politics, Ben?
Well, I worked for Organizing for America, which is part of the DNC, in 2010. So it's been 10 years. So.
All
Yeah.
right, 10 years.
Yeah.
Ooh, and who else do we have here with us?
My name is Mike Whitty, otherwise known by my nickname Dr. Detroit, and I'm one of the founders of the Michigan Democratic Party's Cannabis Caucus. And I'm pleased with the mayor's recent statement of
Well, just introduction right now. We won't go into any of that.
Yeah,
All right. So how long have you been with the Cannabis Caucus?
well, we formed it 2 years ago in
2018. I recall that.
in Cobo Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And we backed Dana Nussel's nomination.
Mm-hmm.
And the party encompassed our view because our main goal was to end the racist drug war, stop giving rap sheets to minority youth, and having the police target minority and poor communities.
Oh, wow.
Often around the notion of fighting the drug war in an overly harsh way. We call it End the Racist Drug War.
Okay, so let me ask you all a question, and I'm going to give you each an opportunity to answer this question, and I'm going to make sure that you all speak into the mic. You two are fine, but Mike, I want you to speak a little bit more into the mic because your voice is not really carrying too well. What are your views on the privatization of public resources and utilities?
It really depends on what public resource you're talking about. What is your take, James? It depends on the resource and like what it's used for.
Okay, so this is the Great Lakes. So I'm going to go with water. So let's talk about the privatization of water, and we know right now the Great Lakes Water Authority has that when it used to be owned by the city of Detroit. So tell me, what are your thoughts on privatizing utilities and resources such as that?
I think the verbiage in and of itself is kind of appealing. You can't privatize something that's public. It's either public or it's not. You know what I mean? And the bottom line is, in my opinion, that when you start talking about privatizing things like water, honestly, I feel like that's the bottom of the slippery slope. Like water it's naturally occurring, and you're going to charge people for it, and you're going to profit from that. And then the end of all that, what's happening is that privatization is actually harming the people who don't have that access. And that has a trickle-down effect. So, for example, what is the best way to fight COVID-19 right now? Wash your hands. Wash your hands. If your water's cut off, what are you not doing? Washing your hands.
Right.
COVID-19 is extremely contagious. We all know this. And people aren't able to fight that because these things are privatized and they just simply can't afford it. And that, to me, is... There's enough ways to make money, especially in America, where we shouldn't be selling water to anyone.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to you, Ben, and tell me your thoughts on privatization of water, or utilities resources.
I really haven't thought that much into it. It's not something that I gave very much consideration into. But yeah, I would imagine that it would be a slippery slope. And there's certain sectors that don't do very well privatized. And there's other ones that do. For example, healthcare does not do well in the free market, and it never has. Economists have known this for centuries, in fact, that healthcare shouldn't. I would imagine water and privatization of that would be fairly similar. It's a natural resource, first off, and it's something that everybody consumes. And like James was saying, I guess when it comes to like washing your hands, something as simple as that while we're fighting COVID-19. If people aren't doing that, that's harming society as a whole. And so as a result, I don't think it should be privatized. But it would really depend on like what the agreement was, and the terms and the details, I guess, all around.
Okay, so you would want more information regarding what is this resource? Is it something that should remain for the people, or is this something that can be privatized?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that the privatization of the Great Lakes is a highway robbery. We've been draining our water table in one of the few, water reserves left in North America that haven't been tapped out. Water will be the new crisis issue of the grandchildren in 50 years.
Interesting
We're
point.
draining our Michigan farmlands water table for fracking so we can sell bottled water from the private sector. So private sector has already got a very big bite into draining away public lands and public water tables, including emptying the Great Lakes. That'll be the issue of the future. We're talking climate change right now and forest fires and hurricanes, but when mankind runs short on water and oxygen, we're going to have a crisis that'll make COVID look relatively mild.
Now, Mike, you just mentioned about climate change. First of all, some people don't think that that's real. So it sounds like you think it's real.
Well, the scientists think it's real, and we're paying the price of ignoring it. Just look at the California-Colorado forest fires out west and the hurricanes that hit the Gulf. They're showing how every natural disaster is aggravated by neglecting the environment. We're following our own nest out of arrogance and greed. Human greediness and human arrogance is following the habitation of the society. We're losing species at the most alarming rate. We're losing the oxygen-breathing forests that help clean the air. We're losing the Amazon. We're seeing destruction, and we're so caught up with our egos, our insecurities, our selfishness and greed that we're putting the planet at risk, as well as the species. Not just our species, but our companions, our animal kingdom.
So our wildlife and
our plants. The plants breathe. They need the oxygen. In fact, COVID is a threat to our breath, too. And Detroit must breathe. Daily demos, black and white kids in their 20s and 30s on the streets like my generation was with the march that I went on with Walter Reuther and Martin Luther King in 1963.
Before you get into that, let me go to Ben. And Ben, what is your thoughts on climate change? Is it something that's real or not?
Yeah, no, it's definitely real. The data shows that. It's the debate really isn't a debate amongst scientists. It's a debate of scientists versus non-scientists. And so when the issue is science, it seems pretty overwhelming. And if you look at the data, the trends, hurricanes, natural disasters, the forest fires happening in California, it's undoubtedly happening as we speak. So yeah, I mean, definitely believe in climate change, and it's a issue that's going to get probably more difficult for us to address as time goes on.
Wow, interesting point. What about you, Jim?
I don't think that people necessarily disagree that there's climate change. I really don't. I think both sides of the political aisle all accept the fact that there is climate change. I think the argument comes in on how do you address it, and what are the sacrifices that are willing to be made. Because there's going to come a point where you're going to tell me, for example, when you talk about things like the Green New Deal, things of that nature, where there's certain things where you can either swing this pendulum so wildly that the people almost think it's dismissive. when it's not dismissive, it's dismissive of the solution, not the problem, if that makes sense. So, for example, if you say the only way we can get rid of climate change is if we eliminate airplanes and automobiles. I'm just a random example. I don't want to live there. I don't. Like, that's not the place for me. So
Okay.
I'm gonna dismiss your solution as something that that's not gonna work.
So that's not a viable solution for you.
That's not a viable solution. So, and then when you say that though, people will go, well, now you're saying climate change isn't real. No, climate change is real, but we have to look at ways where we can make a solution that isn't going to be more harmful to the other aspects of our life. So yes, eliminating all carbon fuel may make us healthier in the sense of we have cleaner air to breathe, our lungs are stronger, et cetera, et cetera. But now, if I'm a trucker and I'm unemployed, what did that do to my mental well-being? What did that do to my economic well-being? There has to be some type of middle ground, which is very difficult when you're talking about something that is an existential threat. But we have to get beyond that almost zealotry of it to say, okay, how can we do something realistic or something that's going to be workable for all aspects of our well-being, not just our physical well-being.
Right. It seems like Ben, you wanted to say something or add something to that.
Yeah, I guess so. There definitely comes a trade-off. I think what's going to happen, and some scientists argue that we're already past a certain threshold when it comes to climate change that we can never go back from. We have polluted the air too much. We've let off too many fossil fuels. We burnt too many fossil fuels to the point where even if we stopped doing it altogether, we'd still be suffering the consequences of it. But I think what's going to probably eventually end up happening is we're probably going to eventually have some kind of energy revolution. We're going to be able to find alternative sources of fuel. And that's really where I think our investment as a country should lie, as well as in regulation. But investment in terms of seeking out alternative forms of energy, not being reliant on Middle Eastern energy, which we aren't very much anymore. But we still are to some extent in the fact that it dictates the market, which they have a sizable portion of, dictates the price for oil. And so, yeah, finding alternatives, energy alternatives, is something that I think would help address it. And I think both Republicans and Democrats could agree to it. But I think that's as far in this political climate as it'll get.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, look, we already got the electric car. Andrew Yang pointed out that the driverless car will replace all those trucking jobs. Artificial intelligence is going to make things so much more robot controlled, like the assembly line. The paint machine is a robot in the paint room. So we're going to already transition to electric, and we're going to end the gasoline and the pollution in the urban cities. We're already into a techno future that's radically changing work, the meaning of work, the amount of work available for humans that isn't replaced by machines. So we could have either techno-optimistic future or a techno-pessimistic future. And the way we've handled COVID, where Trump is trying to kill me and everybody over 50, and doesn't give a damn if I die and everybody's parents who are still alive die, it doesn't matter how many of us go down on over 50, he's willing to let us all be murdered by his disregard for our lives and disregard for death. We're going to have to dig ourselves out of some really reckless and self-centered, greedy attitudes, or we'll destroy our civilization and our planet.
Well, on that note, if we have anyone that wants to call in and join the conversation, please do so by calling 313-355-6018. Again, that number is 313-355-6018. Our phone lines are open. Did someone else want to chime in on this same conversation?
Well, yeah, absolutely, because I do think that we are headed towards a technological revolution. I agree with that. I think it's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. The first one being that in order for us to have a techno revolution, things must be replaced. So I understand that at some point the smart self-driving vehicles and things of that nature are going to be here, but that is going to be a gradual transition. It's not going to be a radical transition.
You know, I thought I would already be driving a flying car.
Oh, I want my
I'm one of
jetpack.
those kids who, grew up with the Jetsons. So I thought that I would be already driving a car in the sky and all that. I don't know if I'm ready for that because that sounds more like aviation than driving.
Well,
So-
I take a differing view on that. I don't think, at least in terms of overall innovation, I don't think we've been very innovative. The data says we haven't. Innovation in many ways can be measured, and it is measured. If you look at economic growth, is usually driven in large part by new innovation and increases to a measure that economists call productivity. It's output per worker. And if you look at those numbers and statistics, you see a lot of increases in economic growth and productivity, especially in the first half of the 20th century, as well as all the way up to like 1973. And then for some reason, 1973, productivity and economic growth kind of take a dive. For a brief period from 95 to 98, you see economic growth that was similar to what it was back pre-1973. But other than that, you really don't see it. And the reason why is because we're not actually as innovative as we once were. The rate of innovation that used to occur is not the same rate that we're doing now. And everybody's all impressed with our new technology. And yeah, we have impressive technology. We're always improving upon our technology. But the rate of improvement isn't what it used to be. Mm-hmm. And I find that very troubling. And it's one of the reasons why, Americans used to have this reasonable expectation that every decade or so, they will do a lot better than their parents. And they'll be able to double in wealth. That's not happening anymore. And it's because we're not as innovative as we used to be. And even now, you look at, one of the most frustrating things to me was President Trump and the media and their interaction with regards to talking about the economy. Donald Trump says, we have the greatest economy in the history of this country. We actually have slightly below average economy every year of his presidency. If you look at economic growth rates, stock market growth, Obama actually had a stronger stock market than Trump did in terms of growth.
That's false news.
No,
That's false news.
no, that's not. That you can look it up. You can look it up in terms of growth. He'll always say the stock market achieved a new record, but the stock market's always achieving records, almost always. It'll dip, but generally speaking, it goes up and down, but in an upward trajectory. You look at the percentage growth from Trump's first day in office to every other day in office. You can track it versus Bill Clinton, Obama, and so forth. And you see that it pales in comparison. And so, what was that? Is there a buzzer here? Or?
Somebody's phone.
Oh.
Not mine, but someone's phone was.
Oh, that's fine. But anyways, I know I'm ranting here, but what I'm saying is innovation isn't really improving much. I'm frustrated by Trump and the media saying like we're undergoing a revolution, and we're really not at all. We're actually below average.
I think the
And
problem,
no one
I don't
calls
mean
it
to cut
out.
you off, but I think the problem with innovation right now is honestly, we've gotten to a point where we're forgetting why people do the things they do. And what I mean by that is I feel like we haven't had an energy revolution because it's not profitable enough yet.
Yeah,
I mean, because the bottom line is,
I agree.
if I went to, the chairman or chairwoman now of General Motors or the chairman of Ford Motor Company and said, we'll double your profits with electric vehicles, those plants will be converted in 48 hours. All of them. Mm-hmm. But right now, it's just not there market-wise. So that's where I do feel like the government can take a more heavy hand, because I can't in good conscience ask a private company to invest in something where they don't know their rate of return even remotely, as opposed, and by investing in that, they're divesting from where their bread is buttered.
Yeah.
I would much rather see the government go in and say, we need to perfect this technology as a government entity, and then let it hit the open market.
Well,
I have no problem with the
We
government
do that
selling
with
things to
DARPA
people.
and other programs, yeah, and that is a problem though. I remember J.P. Morgan gave a letter to investors and it pretty much said like, we're not going to invest in any new technology that isn't projected to have a decent rate of return in 2 years. So it takes a while to develop new technologies, and that is a big problem. And I think in terms of like economic policy, how people think about the economy and talk about it, it's all backwards. they think about it in terms of tax rates, which really isn't the battle here. It's about innovation and incentivizing businesses and entrepreneurs to be on the cutting edge, and that's really what the problem is. And
So what do you all think about the building of Amazon, which is going to be right across the street from our studio? Are you all for that or against it, and why? Let's start with Mike, because he already has his hand up. He's ready to
I've
go.
been following this from the beginning with the sale of the fairgrounds to Magic Johnson and the guy from Lansing and their failure to make anything happen, the mayor's takeover, a lawsuit that was won challenging the mayor's moves that didn't seem to be sound for the city's maximizing the land value. But I had always had a vision that made sense to have an alliance between Ferndale and Hazel Park and make the 8 Mile Woodward connection a three-way, like Avenue of Fashion and Livernois getting revived, to leverage this property and turn it into a north end community where it could have a unification across the 8 Mile to the Ferndale Hazel Park revival. Hazel Park is the new Ferndale. Hazel Park's doing just great. It's a bargain for young singles or young couples can't quite afford an expensive house to get an affordable house in Hazel Park. So we should have taken the model of Ferndale Hazel Park to integrate with the Palmer Woods and the of Sherwood Forest and this neighborhood on the west side of Woodward next to us here, and built a really cool neighborhood, some like our fun neighborhoods all across the city. So I'm not sure just making it a quick shot of jobs from Amazon in a big warehouse is the best we could do at the crossroads at the heart of Detroit, where the spirit of the Detroit River runs right up Woodward to Chief Pontiac, and we should make that 8 Mile something deeper than just an Amazon warehouse.
Okay.
So, lack of imagination on the mayor's part.
Let me jump over to Jim and see what your thoughts are.
I don't know the ins and outs of the deal. I will say this: I am always a fan of people being able to work and provide. I do feel, especially if I'm just being honest here, especially as an African American person, I feel like the despair within our community comes from not doing what we know should be done. So what I mean by that, especially as a black male, when you have black men who have children, who have wives, who cannot provide for them sufficiently, that leads to what I call crimes of despair. Criminality is criminality, but there's a lot of crimes of despair. A lot of people are robbing because I don't have an alternative, or they're committing robberies because of frustration, because I can't do what I know I'm supposed to do as a man. And I know that may sound a little sexist. I'm sorry, but that's the reality.
It's a reality for a lot of black males.
Yes, exactly. So that's the reality on the ground. So is Amazon necessarily going to change the world and put everybody in Harvard? No. But if it's going to allow people to go and start constructing what looks like a good life again, to bring them back to it. And also, I feel like this is an opportunity for people to start using their entrepreneurial spirit. So we have a conduit. It's not up to government to tell us, go out and become a businessman now, or go out and buy a box truck and see if you can drive for that Amazon plant that's down the street from your house in your neighborhood. That's our job as a community. I feel like it can be a great conduit for helping to rebuild families and helping to rebuild an entrepreneurial spirit. Is it the best thing? No. Is it the best thing you have at the moment? Probably. Amazon, for like it or not, that's the new factory.
Yeah.
Just period. Like, that's the new factory job.
So no more the Motor City anymore. We might become Tech Town now.
If you think about it, we already are.
Yeah.
If you think about downtown Detroit, it's all they call it fintech, financial tech. It's all Quicken Loans and that family of companies. And you have an Amazon plant that was just constructed here on the state fairgrounds. And it's funny you said Pontiac. They just constructed a plant and distribution center in Pontiac. So there's a lot of different things where it's at this point it used to be 18, get on the line, get in the UAW, you straight. That's not happening anymore.
Right.
It's just not. So we have the new factory. That's what it is, and we have to do just like generations before us. They took GM and turned it into something. It took my grandmother coming up from the South, and then she goes in the plant, or my mom goes in the plant, and then after my mom gets out, no more plant for us. But GM put you through college.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So now this is going to be that next evolution for that generation who maybe who missed that boat. If you start out at Amazon and you work your way through Amazon, that one that you raising, hopefully Amazon put you through college.
What's your thoughts?
Typically speaking, I'm not a fan of the mayor.
Well, tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while, but I from what I remember from that deal, the city gave up a little bit. And the way, I'm all for Amazon hiring people. They hire people to good paying jobs. People aren't forced to take these jobs. They want to because it offers them opportunity. It offers them opportunity to advance and to provide for themselves. But with that being said, generally speaking, I don't like how the mayor tends to try to kind of manufacture businesses to come to the city as opposed to letting it occur and creating conditions for businesses to thrive. And instead what he does is he kind of just talks to people. It seems like an insider game, I should say.
So I'm going to, since Ben actually expressed how he feels about Detroit's Mayor Duggan, I'm going to ask my rest of this panel here, how do you feel about Detroit's mayor?
Well, I'll tell you what, I asked a pollster, was this mayor going to turn out the Detroit vote, the Detroit base vote for this presidential election for Biden-Harris? And he said there hasn't been a mayor since Coleman Young that turned out and worked seriously for the state Democratic Party and the National Party. These are Democrat urban mayors across the board. We've had different characters across the years since Coleman. And I worked.
No one has been as powerful as the
But
Honorable Coleman.
Coleman had a sense, he had an ideological sense of coalition politics and building strength. And I was hoping that Duggan, to earn himself a job with Biden, would work to pull that extra 75,000 Detroiters who didn't vote for the top of the ticket, to pull that missing 75,000 votes our way in this election, which will be crucial to carrying Michigan, saving Peters for a Senate victory, which we expect by flipping the Senate to being Democrat, so that Biden has something to work with, backing from the Senate, not a Republican opposition with McConnell. And a lot of the folks like Duggan could either make the clerk's job easier, staff her correct, and not embarrass the city clerk again this time around. Remember, Gilchrist ran against her last time. So to make this thing tight and make it work for the city clerk and for this election is a big. And if Duggan hasn't put his shoulder to the wheel in pulling his machine, and he has a machine, that pulling his machine into producing turnout from our base, we're going to have an embarrassing close call in Michigan, and we could even risk the entire project of humanity around mayors that are too self-centered and too power-oriented and not people-oriented.
Yeah.
What do you say, John?
I think there's two facets of it. I think there is a part of it that is the political side of it.
Turning out the vote.
Yeah, get out the vote, etc., where you have to look at the two hats that he wears. Mike Duggan is not only a political entity, he's also the mayor of a city. And he does have a certain obligation to all of his citizens, not just the Democrats. And I think that's a mistake that we make, is that people look at Detroit as a monolith, and they say Detroit is a Democratic city. Well, I'm gonna tell you something. You think all them kids who work for Quicken Loans who moved downtown Detroit, from Royal Oak, from Ferndale, you think those all Democrats?
Most of them are, or they wouldn't be moving into the city and living and voting in the city.
I'm gonna tell you what. As somebody who lived downtown,
Yeah.
who's worked with those individuals, a lot of them are not. But my point is, so the mayor does have to focus on developing the city a certain kind of way. Does he do everything I'd like him to do? Absolutely not. I do feel that he's doing what he can as far as the development of the city. And that's one thing that I do like about the State Fairground location, quite frankly, is Detroit has been developing inside out. So downtown. and finally something big is happening outside of downtown. And I mean, so I guess that's a really long way of saying that I'm not in love with the man, but I get his conundrum. He does have to run his city, and he has to run his city at an international border, no matter who's in office. Mm-hmm. If Donald Trump is president, as he's been for the last 4 years, Detroit can't stop. So it can't always be well, I'm going to buck the system until we get Joe Biden or Democrat X in there. You can't do that, because at the end of the day, all politics is local, and at the end of the day, that's his job, if we just want to be frank about it. It's his job to run the city of Detroit. And running the city of Detroit and working with certain people isn't always going to line up with democratic values, small d. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to always line up with party politics.
But don't you think it should line up in this election when we're running against a racist motherfucker, to use the expression of Rashida Tlaib? We're up against one of the most Klan-like reactionary nativists, haters, who's fanned all the extremist killer groups, the neo-Nazis, the Confederates, the militia that tried to kidnap and murder the governor. This is a time of emergency, and making the city stronger by making the city's votes stronger empowers the mayor and gives him more leverage, certainly with a Democratic administration. We're just talking Coleman Young now. Coleman Young went before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Coleman Young saw an enemy that had to be struggled against. It was racism, and it was a kind of creed of greed. Capitalism run wild to crush the weak people, only for the rich. The rich get richer, poor get poorer. Extremes of poverty. Go over here on John R. in Nevada, walk Nevada across to I-75 on foot, and you can see where we are between Woodward and the I-75 expressway. I mean, the poor suffer, and the rich up Woodward can live high on the hog.
So with this being said, what are you all's thoughts on Proposal N? That's the proposal to help end blight, where there's an X amount of money that's put on the table to end the blight situation, to keep structurally sound homes and to rebuild those homes, and it's on the ballot for this election cycle.
Once again, I speak for Jim Johnson and only Jim Johnson, but I must say that I am not a fan of blight demolition programs in general. And the reason that is because a lot of the people who work, a lot of the money that's used for those are what they call CDBG funds, or Community Development Block Grant funds, which come from the federal government, which can be used in so many different ways. Now, don't get me wrong, removing blight is important, but I feel like we have to, we got to start grabbing the bull by the horns with certain aspects of it. Okay. It's like all we doing is we knock down this house, we knock down this house, we knock down this house. Number one, how many of those houses could have been saved?
And that's that's a good point, because there doesn't seem to be any type of guidelines to determine what a structurally sound home is.
Exactly. And even within the name, like I said, now Proposal N's a little bit different, but prior blight programs usually ran off CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grants. Development Block Grants. We are destroying and not developing. And that's an issue for me when you start talking about certain types of programming like this. I am just a huge fan of, if you're going to use community funds to invest in the community, actually invest in the community. We can walk and chew gum. For so long, it's been all or bust. And even now, this came about after it was gonna be, we're gonna finish knocking down these houses. And then the city council and other organizations said, no. And then it kind of changed up and let's double up. And now you're kind of getting to that development portion, but there's way more development that could be happening, in my opinion.
Okay, and we've just been joined by Brandon Bryce, and we're going to have him chime into this conversation. We're talking about Proposal N, and if that is your thoughts on that particular proposal.
So first of all, thank you, Nagpanji, for having me. Brandon Bryce, host of Straight Talk 910 a.m. I just talked about Proposal N on my show, and I've always said any blight buster I support 100%. The problem is I don't necessarily support it from this administration, because when we're talking about stewardship, if you didn't get the first $250 million right, why should I give you another opportunity to get it wrong again? And so I think the challenge that we face is we've got to start asking, what do we leverage when we talk about big dollars, and then how much of the blight demo is actually going towards subcontract agreements? I can tell you, I live downtown. So, and it's appalling to see folks who don't look like the folks in the neighborhood doing the work, doing the construction work, doing the labor-intensive work. And so there's a whole lot of questions. But when it comes to proposal N, and we talk about the elimination of blight, I think we need to look at it with big answers. We need to ask some real tough questions. We need to ask, what is going to be the outcome? How are people from the community, not from Warren and Saline and all these other communities, how are folks from the east side of Detroit, Mack and Bewick, 7 Mile and Gratiot? You might not know about that, my friend. No, I'm joking. but how are these communities going to actually benefit from this Prop N? And so I don't necessarily say no, but I say yes with certain things that need to be further discussed, certain amendments. I think if we have that, then I say, Detroit is 30 years behind of blight of where we should have been versus where we are today.
Let me ask this. I just finished reading a book called The $500 House. I would love to hear your response to greater emphasis on preservation so that we could encourage more people to take maybe a shell that's still restorable, or not let things sit and deteriorate from what was once a Victorian to a unsavable property. There must be, maybe if we had a greater appreciation of preservation and we lived with a little more conservation, we could save some of the architecture and history and beauty of the city, and we could even save some neighborhoods instead of turning the entire city beyond the boulevard into prairie. There's too many prairies in Detroit.
So I'm glad you asked that question. There's a couple things here. The first thing is that Detroit, and I'm going to say this loud and clear for you folks who may not be able to hear me or might have hearing aids. Detroit, you ain't got no hearing aid. I already looked, I already checked. Detroit does not have a gentrification issue. We have a occupation issue. We've got neighborhoods that in many cases haven't been lived in 20 or 30 years. The challenge is that when we talk about what are the benefits that people that are just recently moving in getting that the folks that have been in the neighborhood for the last 50 and 70 years did not get. That's the first problem. The second thing is, we've got to look at the fact that the city, in some cases, at one time Detroit had over 2 million people. Right now we're probably shy of 700,000, if that. And so the challenge is that we've got to start looking at how do we do more with less. And so we've got to look at the greening opportunities that we've seen, more parks. We've got to look at the fact that in some cases, some neighborhoods aren't coming back. Folks aren't moving in. They're not attractive. There's no industry there. So now we've got to look at, what are the next steps? And the next mayor of Detroit has to start looking at not necessarily preparing for those jobs of today, but what are going to be the jobs of tomorrow? What are the land uses that are going to be here? We've got a major city airport that is lying vacant and getting more cracked in crevices, and it's sitting there. And if we don't do anything, it's going to continue to sit there. And so now the challenge is, well, how do we prepare to say if we've got a space use, how do we use it for mixed use? How do we talk about, with Amazon, we can't just talk about Amazon coming across the street from here and being a provider to the community, but what are the things that make Amazon run, like flight? And when you start talking about freight and flight, we've got an airport. It'd be surely nice to have Amazon and FedEx corporate headquarters to flow that trade traffic out of city airport. See, this is called creativity. Something that unfortunately we haven't seen from much of the council. And so the challenge is that we've got an opportunity as Detroit to be innovative, to be creative, and to start looking at the fact that the three things that are moving cities forward is trade, traffic and technology. And if we're not having those conversations, we're wasting time.
Could you be our next mayor?
No.
I've been asking Brandon that for a while now.
No.
Let me ask you all, what are your thoughts on how President Trump has handled foreign affairs?
Well, the reality is...
Not starting with you, Brandon. I'm going to start with Jim. You talk...
Go ahead. That's what I do.
I know.
Well, when you're talking about foreign affairs, you have to look at it from... It's such a complex issue, and unfortunately, we're dealing with a president who doesn't have a complex thought pattern. I do feel that the agreements made with Israel and some of its neighbors were a positive thing. I'm not going to pretend that they're not. But I do feel that the detriment of our standing within the world as the United States, as the world's remaining superpower, that comes with real consequences and real issues. So what I mean by that is, I hear when the president says NATO should pay their fair share, the other nations should pay their fair share. And I agree with that. They should. Everyone should pay for their own security. I pay for it at my house. We should pay for it as a nation. But what you cannot do is isolate those nations and do it in such a public way where another power may look and go, why not try it? Russia doesn't incur on other nations. China doesn't just go and incur on area in the South China Sea because they're not afraid of the United States. Everyone's afraid of the United States. I live in the United States and I'm afraid of the United States sometimes. But when you have a president who down talks our foreign policy, or it changes on the dime, because you have a Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, where I've seen him make an announcement at 9 a.m. on Monday. Trump sends a tweet at 10:15 that same Monday, and now the State Department has changed its position. Well, wait a minute. You're the Secretary of State. You have career diplomats and professionals who came up with this strategy, I'm assuming over a period of time, and now it's a bad deal at 10:15, and the policy of the world's largest economy and most powerful military has changed in 140 characters. That's petrifying. So the foreign policy, for its pluses, have had ramifications that I think we haven't felt yet, because foreign policy is not a short game. Foreign policy is not 4 years. You can't set a 4-year policy with Russia when Vladimir Putin been president for 20 years. I'll wait for the next guy.
Good point.
Well
Mike,
said.
Mike, what's your point? What do you want to add to that conversation?
Well, I think the fact that we have abandoned our allies and befriended the most egotistical dictators of the world, from North Korea to Russia. What Trump is more comfortable with a Mussolini strongman, authoritarian, anti-democratic strain in humanity. We're at the shadow of having a form of American fascism brought to Trump by these extremist groups. They've shifted the dial so that the extremist groups are running the Republican Party. The militia, the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo, who shot security guards dead in Oakland, California, to strike people against each other and cause civil war. We're at the edge of it in Michigan. To me, Trump is the shadow side of humanity. We all have a little devil in us. To say the Lord's work is to keep that devil in the basement, not let him run the world or try to run this country. We've got evil threatening our better angels, and I'm just hoping that King's dream can be kept alive, and we'll all come out okay, and we'll not let the Klan ride so high in the saddle ever again.
All right. So, Brandon, let me get your viewpoint on that, because I know you're ready. You're always ready.
No. So, this is an interesting question. The president, and I've tried to be very, I've tried to look at both sides of this. There's some things that the president has said and done that I totally disagree with and don't support. But then there are some things that he has done that I do support. I think the opportunity is the president's a businessman. And being that the president is a businessman, I think we've got to start making some real business decisions. One, you asked about foreign policy. And so the challenge is that we can't begin as Detroiters to talk about foreign policy when in many cases we haven't dealt with the foreign policy right across the river called Canada. And how does that benefit this city when you start talking about international trade, when you start talking about borders that are severely underfunded and underdeveloped? That's what moves cities forward. And so I think I'm less focused on what the president is doing and is not doing. I'm more focused on how does Detroit benefit from what can come out of the federal government. I think that's a more strategic approach, and I think that's how we move Detroit forward. The challenge is that when you talk about the trade issue, that has a big impact, obviously, on the auto industry, because if other countries aren't buying it, then there's no need to really sell it. And so I think we've got to look at, when instead of worrying about, what the president's son and what Hunter Biden is doing, how do we really begin to ask and create opportunities where we can petition to the federal government, i.e. the White House, the ambassador to Canada, and start to have real conversations about how do we move trade and the conversation of international trade with our now two bridges that go back and forth. How do we begin to start talking about how do we move that economy for our Detroiters and put people back to work?
Okay, Brandon, I want you to stay with us, and we are joined by two new guests. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit, just a real quick 30 seconds about themselves. So I'm going to always start from my immediate left and go around.
Well, I'm Councilman Sherrod of the greater city of Ecorse, and I'm looking forward to getting reelected for Ecorse City Council. And I've been working very hard in the community, and I've been getting a lot of good responding in my area.
Okay, and who else do we have with us?
Okay, my name is Stephen Boyle. I'm a Green Party candidate for state representative here in District 3, the home of the state fairgrounds.
All right.
All right.
So the question that I'm going to ask you now is pertaining to, I think I want to go with legalization. Are you all for? We know that we just been approved for Michigan to be to do legalization of recreational marijuanas, but there's only 3 cities that have actually, participated or to opt in. What are you all's thoughts on the legalization of marijuana and part 2, prostitution?
I definitely won't be the first one.
So I'm going to go with Stephen Boyle on this one.
Okay. When it comes to the legalization of marijuana, I see the opportunity to keep our people on the street instead of in jails. There has been so many families have been torn apart just by the use of a substance that literally has been an urban, so many households before 1900. It's been used for centuries, thousands of years, really, to help people go through their ailments. I'm for legalization. I'm also for the legalization of prostitution, because I literally have seen I live at John R. in Nevada. I've literally seen what's going on with prostitution. I've seen the people strung out on everything because they're not being given cash. They're literally being given substance as a response to doing the job that they're doing. And it is a job, and they put in hours. And if we legalize things, people have a healthier way that they approach things. On both sides of the situation, people aren't going to be getting sick as often. We can know that that standard rates start showing up, that people could actually see, how do I say this, the oldest profession in the world, and yet we can't see the fact that people continue to do this work. It's going to happen regardless. I'm not trying to say that it is for everyone, and I do know that some families definitely go through a lot of struggles when it comes to family members engaging in. And I think that there's been people that literally have made their path through and beyond and they're perfect. They're awesome as a result of having had this, and I'm going to say, a worldly experience of meeting so many different people and having so many experiences.
Okay. So let's take this question over to the Honorable Devontae Sherrod.
Well, what I think of it is that the marijuana is illegal, and regardless of what we want, it's illegal to the state of Michigan.
Actually, it's not. It's legal for recreational and medicinal purposes now.
Is it?
It
It's
is.
legal on the federal level.
On the federal level?
Yes.
Well, okay, well, in the United States of America, so some cities, they don't want it. I know that we in the city of Ecorse, we was going to pass it, but right now at the moment, we're not going to because some of the residents, they don't want it. And so right now, this is not the time for us to have it in our city, in the city of Ecorse, because we just got a new police chief. So when the right time for us to have the marijuana, we will bring it forth in the city of Ecorse.
Okay. And I'm just before no, let me stay on topic. So, Brandon Bryce, let's go to you and your thoughts on. Also prostitution. You forgot to mention that one, Honorable Sherrod.
Okay, prostitution. I don't agree with the prostitution because right now I believe that the American people need some help right now, and then when you get more prostitution, it's not going to work for the United States of America because right now we are in the need of help. So that's why I stand on it.
Okay. So, Mr. Bryce, your thoughts?
So as far as legalization of marijuana, I've been very adamant. I agree with this man's shirt, go green, and I'm not talking about Michigan State. The reality is we are far behind on an issue that should have been legal 30 years ago. I am 100% of a proponent of legalizing marijuana in the city of Detroit. But the other part of that is there are a couple of other things that we need to get around when we talk about how do we look at the zoning issues of marijuana. How do we get more of minorities into the industry of being and owning dispensaries? That's a big problem. It's a shame when 97% of those people who own dispensaries either don't look like the people who are buying the weed or live in other places outside of Detroit, where Detroit is a place that they make that money. So that needs to be given more consideration. And then final with marijuana is the exoneration. If it's legal and you can buy it, then we need to start expunging records. That is what we need to do. Now, you said prostitution.
Yes.
A couple things with prostitution. So I am not in support of it. Let me be very clear on that. However, I don't think it should be, we're talking about morals versus laws. What's morale versus what should be legal. I do not believe in regulating sex. And I'll be honest with you, I think that is something that is a very dangerous thing because it's when you start regulating sex, now you're talking about regulating who you can share your intimate moments with. That should not be a part of the government or municipality's business. But the other part is when we talk about prostitution, I look at it less as a criminal offense. It's more of a public health offense, which is why, states like Nevada, who's already done this, what they've done is they've tried to regulate that industry, which creates an opportunity for keeping those people who engage in those activities safer, mandating that they go through certain health checks, and then regulating and controlling the men or the Johns who participate in that activity. So even though it is something that is immoral, it is not something that is necessarily illegal. And they're dealing with the realities that if people are going to do this, then they at least need to be safe in this act. So I don't support it, but I also am not a fan of regulating regulating what two consensual people decide to do. That's not the role of the government.
Okay. So with that being said, let me ask you all, what are your thoughts on building a better economical structure within Michigan? Everybody's face is blank, huh?
Personally, I would love to see much more cooperative engagement in business so that people get that sense of owning the business that they work. And I don't think that we have encouraged enough development around businesses that are cooperative businesses as that standard that we could actually strive toward. I think that Detroit could definitely be a flagship of seeing a turnaround in our people's health and well-being by fostering more cooperative ventures. And I would love to see those cooperative ventures be around a Green New Deal and start taking the properties that are vacant around our city and turning them into energy centers, empowerment centers, be it solar, wind energy, we can do those. We can also talk about the power that goes into our bodies when we do gardening in these empty spaces. And we can also turn around and take the internet by storm, because right now in this district, 40 to 50% of our households don't have residential internet. And when people say, hey, go to the website for this or use this app, we don't have access to that right now. There's a huge missing. We're like back in the 90s. And the access isn't what it was in the 90s anymore, because people have literally lifted themselves up from those levels of access and pushed toward modern technology. But we're not offering modern technology in our most at-need neighborhoods. And if we get into worker cooperatives, we can build the infrastructure. And we can own the infrastructure and benefit from it.
Okay, I'm going to go to Honorable Sherrod to answer the same question.
Well, I think we should get more involved in the state of Michigan, and not only just in the state of Michigan, out through this country. A lot of us, we're not engaged to what we are doing in our communities, so I believe that we should get more involved in the political field and also in our entire areas.
Okay, but what about the economic development?
I don't know anything about that.
Okay, so with you being a city council person of Ecorse, how would you attract business to the city of Ecorse?
Well, what I would do in the city of Ecorse would give them a tax break, 2-year tax break, and allow them to be able to come to the city and be able to get their business up and running and going right at the moment. That's what I want to do on my second term. That is what my second term, what I want to do on my second term, to bring businesses to the city and be able to get them 2-year tax breaks.
Okay. Brandon, what are your thoughts on how we can boost our economy?
Blow the system up. No, I'm joking. So a couple things here. One is we've got to completely change the way we've done business in Metro Detroit. The reality is the old way ain't working, and it ain't working for most Metro Detroiters. So the first thing is we need to create a new tax structure that supports people who are hiring people from the community. So the first thing is not only just tax breaks, but we've got some regulation issues when it comes to starting a business. If you fry fish, you don't need to give the city of Detroit 3 and 4 licenses to prove that you can fry some fish. So the red tape, we need to completely get rid of it and get rid of the city income tax completely. And we need to make it attractive for people, not just outside of Michigan, but people throughout the nation, to say Detroit is open for business. The problem is we have not done that because you got all these regulations and ordinance. So the first thing is we need to blow the system up. We need to get rid of income taxes. We need to extend tax breaks if we haven't extended them more. And then the other thing is we've got to get into the business of subcontract agreements. Now, this is important because this is how we get labor unions involved. I'm not anti-labor, but labor folks in labor unions like making money too. And so this is an opportunity where when we put up a building or when we put up a high-rise or we put up a structure, somebody's got to do the floor. Somebody's got to do the plumbing. Somebody got to do the electricity. That's a job creator. And so we've got to start looking at how do we, in a sense, and I hate to use this term, corporatize labor. Detroit is the home of organized labor, but the problem is if there's no business, there's no need for you. So now we've got to go a step further and say, how do we get individual contractors, union or non-union labor, in the game? And how do we make them a part of, whether it's schools, whether it's buildings, whether it's parks, somebody can do this work. And so subcontract agreements is crucial. And then last but not least, the biggest economic driver, once again, Detroit has more than 22 assets, one being the port, but nothing's happening there. So how do we begin to look at creating the jobs of the future to put those folks back to work? Because the reality is this: we're a blue-collar town. We need to own it. We need to accept it. So when we start talking about the types of schools, in addition to the 40-something DPS public schools that we have, now we need to look at how do we recreate the trade schools and recreate co-op schools to get those people back to work. So it's not enough to just say every kid's going to college, because every kid's not going to college. So now we got to go a step further and say, let's meet people where they are versus where we want them to be.
But how do we do that?
I just told you.
I'm going to pose this question to Stephen. You just answered that question, but this is about specifically literacy. in the school system. So how do we ensure that our children are being properly educated and they're able to read at the level of education that they're at?
Okay, I know that he was just talking about something. I wanted to talk about
Go
that
ahead,
for just
go
a
ahead.
moment, okay? And one of the things that I've seen is that our Department of Neighborhoods, they have certain people that they know. They're on a list. And most of the people in our neighborhoods don't know how to get on the list.
Or
How
that
do you
there
get
is a
on
list.
the list so that you can actually do the work? And how do you actually start a business and get yourself in on those opportunities? Because if they see you working and you're not on their list, they're like, wait a second, who are you and what are you doing? And oh, have you paid all your fees and all the other things? It's like, well, how much have I got to go through in order to be able to start just doing the work I want? I bought a lot. I want to develop on the lot. What have I got to do to make that happen? Now, when it comes to the literacy, one of the things that I really would love to push for, and this is a long-term plan, is unhooking schools from our taxes, because poor communities unfortunately get underfunded schools. And this really saps the opportunity for every child to be the excellent student that they possibly could be if they had all of the resources that anybody else has. If we actually dealt more with, okay, if we have property taxes across the entire state, we brought all those in, and then we equally distributed them across all of the school districts. No longer would we have a West Bloomfield schools where the people would be like, well, we got so much excess income for putting into the schools because we have these wonderful properties. What's going on in our city? You know, we have bank-owned properties, and the bank-owned properties, we need to be collecting on our bank-owned properties. We can't just be letting them sit derelict and waiting for somebody to come along and buy them. We actually need to put a cap on how long can a bank-owned property sit derelict and abandoned. And if it reaches that cap, it has to get transferred, and it has to get transferred literally into an ownership and an occupancy. That's where I believe that we need to be working. And I think that as far as the literacy goes, you start putting some of this together, and you're going to start seeing the children are going to say, I want that level of literacy. When I talked about the internet access, that's all about that literacy too. People need to know how to use a search engine, how to build a website, because that nowadays is a simple click, 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 and it's all together. And you'll see that 5 and 6 year olds are starting to learn on how to do these things. It's not outside the realm of possibility. And if it's possible, we need to encourage it. We can't have people that are unfortunately holding their children back because that's not what they did. We need to encourage parents to allow their children to explore new futures, and for those coaches that are in the schools to see the opportunities that are there in front of them, instead of telling people, hey, you're moving too fast, I need to bring you back into the group. We need to be able to allow our children to excel.
All right. And what about you, Honorable Sherrod? What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is teach the children how to do more reading and also give them tutoring. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay, so tutoring is going to be a big thing to help children increase their literacy rate.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you all think about should the U.S. permit every individual that wants to enter our borders because they are seeking freedom, asylum, or want a better life?
So I'll answer that, but I want to touch on the literacy piece just for a hot sec. I'm a huge ed reformer, and our kids can't afford failing school districts. And it's a damn shame. Maybe I can say that. Hopefully I can't. So don't fire me. Okay.
No, this is WJZZ.
All right, got you.
We can say whatever we want.
I'll say this out there for all the Detroiters. It's a damn shame when students have to go to the state to fight for better education.
And sue, yes.
And sue. That tells me that I'm an advocate, and it tells me that at the end of the day, we got a problem with our public school system. We got a public safety problem. We got a public safety and an issue when we talk about quality education in certain areas like the East Side, which I won't name, and we've got to do something about it. And how do we do that? We've got to give parents real educational choice. That's the first thing. But let me answer your respond to your question. We sit on a border, and so to me, when we talk about, I always look at Detroit as I call Detroit the new Ellis Island. It should be the new Ellis Island, where people should come to Detroit. We got the space, and Mike Bloomberg 10 years ago mentioned. He said, immigrants are moving into cities that are already oversaturated. Whereas places like Detroit, which we once were an immigrant hub, how do we get the world to come back to this place we call the Motor City? And so folks from Canada, Mexico, Iraq. We have one of the largest, Metro Detroit at least, has one of the largest Iraqi communities outside of the Middle East. How do we bring these folks back to Metro Detroit? And so I'm a huge advocate of it. I actually stood up to the president on this when we started talking about asylum cities. I said Detroit should absolutely be an asylum city. Now the challenge is, just like some cousins, during Thanksgiving, we don't want everybody in Detroit, and that's the reality. But the reality is, when we look at the majority of folks who come here who want a better life, who have good intentions, who will contribute to the economy, will start businesses, we need to embrace them and give them a piece of that thing we call the American dream.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to WJZZ, and if you are willing to call in and want to join the conversation, please do so at 313-355-6018. I am Dr. Thomas, the moderator for today's shootout, and we have joining us the Honorable Devontae Sherrod, Brandon Bryce, and candidate Stephen Boyle. I know your name, Stephen. I was going to get it out there. I was trying to have a dramatic pause.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Now, let me ask this. Recently, the DuPont Pharmaceutical Company was sued for their role in the opiate epidemic. What are your thoughts on holding pharmaceutical companies liable for their part in this crisis? I'm going to start with Sherrod.
Pertaining to that, I don't really know what that are because I haven't researched on that.
Okay.
To be straight honest with you.
I'll take that. So, couple things. And this was a case where we're creating criminals who, in some cases, they don't need to be behind bars. They need help. And so the challenge is we should not only hold DuPont accountable, but we should also look at, when we talk about opioids and mental health, I want to put those two together because they impact each other. We have a crisis in Metro Detroit, not because of folks, not because we're creating criminals by throwing them in jail who are high on that stuff that we call it, but because in some cases these people need help and should have received that help years ago, and no one's addressed it. And so not only looking at drug courts is a way that we can resolve that. Holding these pharmaceutical companies accountable for that, we also should do. But like I said, drug courts and also looking at mental health facilities. I think the worst thing we did in Wayne County, at least, was get rid of the mental hospital facilities.
That's a whole nother topic.
But it relates back to when you start talking about opioids, because a lot of these folks, and I'll just leave it at this point, they're not, the opioid epidemic has created criminals who should have never been criminals.
Okay.
They're patients.
All right, let's go to Stephen.
Okay, so part of the problem I've got with this is that we're looking at a corporation and holding the corporation accountable. I'm going to say that there are individuals inside corporations, and they're performing roles. And those roles are being directed by certain people that have something that they're looking to do that is probably illicit within their corporate. They're not taking care of every means of oversight. They're not getting the proper peer reviews, and a lot of these pharmaceuticals don't have proper testing periods. The number of I think it's 90 days or something like this. Mm-hmm. How many chemicals literally? You can't figure out what's going on within 90 days. You need longer to see more effects on some of these. Now, we do need to hold the corporations to account, but I also think that the executives, and I'm going to say literally, the investors. People are investing in these corporations. And if your investments actually need to tank a little bit, if you're investing in dirty business that you know is basically propagating problems and lies.
Okay. We have a new guest that has joined us. Can you please tell us your name and give us a brief introduction? And then I'm going to ask you the same question that I just posed to the current guest, which is should pharmaceutical companies be held liable for their part that they played in the opiate crisis?
Okay. So, I'm Michael Malai. I am a fellow. Okay.
You're fine. Go ahead.
All right. I'm Michael Malai. I'm a Green Party candidate for the Regent of the University of Michigan. Anybody in the state of Michigan can vote for me on Tuesday, or if you've gotten me filled out on your absentee ballot. The important thing is to vote. Should pharmaceutical companies be held accountable? Definitely. I mean, like, it's been an absolute shame what's been going on. We've known quite about the effects of opioids for hundreds of years, especially within my culture. In Asia, they've had entire wars over that stuff. Yeah, it's like, I don't see how I mean, so we know how that it's narcotics in its worst forms, that it is a narcotic, and it's very addictive. Even in the medically prescribed uses, it is incredibly addictive. And it is a misfortune that over the past 20 years or so, doctors got into the habit of trying to treat pain and overprescribe the
Opioid.
Opioids. Sorry, I'm not used to being interviewed.
No, you're fine. We're all friends here.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So they know they know the effects, but the pharmaceutical companies, they've spent millions of dollars to prescribe to basically sell the doctors on prescribing the opioids so that they can make their money, and the consequences of that has been incredible. I mean, like, just blurring the lines of what is a legal drug and a non illegal drug. It's often in terms of whether you can get it past the lawmakers so that you can make your bucks. So, they definitely should have consequences for their actions and the marketing and the harm that it's done. Because a lot of people, when they can't afford the high prices that the prescribed drugs are that they cost, they'll graduate onto the illicit drugs to get the same high.
Okay.
And that's been a huge problem in society.
Okay. So I'm going to go to one of the questions that has been emailed to me. So, and we have another guest that has just joined us. So let me allow him to introduce himself before we move on. And again, you are watching the 2020 Political Shootout. I am Dr. Thomas, your moderator. And if you would like to call and join the conversation, please do so at 313-355-6018. And who do we have joining us?
You have JR from Facts and Opinions. I have a show on the station.
All right. So thank you for joining us. So we're just asking questions right now, and I'm going to ask you to answer some of these questions as well. Okay.
No problem.
All right. So one of the people wants to know, can you please shed light on how you will how teachers can be recruited and retained within the educational system? I'm going to start with Stephen on this one.
Wow. I think that some of the best teachers found themselves as students helping other students. And as a result, they said, I think I could actually do something with that. And I think it's a matter of passion, and somehow, how do we recruit great teachers? I think we need to recognize when somebody may be so concerned about someone else's performance with them, like a cohort. I think that cohorts are actually a really interesting learning vehicle for groups of people to literally problem solve and learn the dynamics of working together. And doing this as students at a younger age gives them more, business acumen as they get older, and how to deal with the world and the social dynamics that they're going to be entering into. I think that our teachers, I love teachers that have different ways of exhibiting to the students how the problem that they're facing exists in the world. I had somebody literally say, I was really bad at fractions until my teacher sat me down with a pound of weed and told me, all right, how are you going to separate this and sell it? All of a sudden, fractions was like, oh, no sweat now. I understand it.
You had to get down to that student's level.
You've got to get to something the person values and understand, what's the motivating factors here? If they're not motivated to learn, this is, it's elementary.
Okay.
It really is.
Yeah. I think you have to find. You have to get the interest in the teacher, because if the teacher doesn't have the interest, if they're just thinking it's going to be a job instead of a vocation, then it's definitely going to reflect upon the students and the quality of the teaching. They're not going to have their heart into it. It's just going to be a job for them. So identify the people where it's a passion and make it possible so that they can do this passion. They have this commitment.
So where should we do that recruitment from? I'm going to give that answer to JR.
Okay. I want to be clear on the question, so can I hear it one more time?
Okay, so the question is, how can we recruit and maintain or retain educators here in Michigan?
Okay. Now, this is maybe a little bit, my answer may be a little bit removed from what you guys are used to.
Doesn't matter.
Let me just start with this. My opinion is that in order for us to recruit and retain good teachers, it begins at home, okay? The reason why I say that is because if you notice, now I went to school, I went all the way through, and I don't really recall too many metal detectors when I was going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall too many incidents where the student would get up and attack the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall too many times where that child would speak back to that teacher and not be reprimanded by their parent, okay? It's already a tough job being an educator, all right? But to add on or even compound that job, the struggles in that job by having a child who is not dealt with in a proper manner by their parent and then brought into the educational system and expect the teacher to become the parent, that's a little difficult. You know what I'm saying? That kind of really puts a teacher at a disadvantage, if you ask me. Because even with being a teacher, these teachers and the way the rules are set up, they can go to the parent and explain to the parent that, well, your child is being a little bit disruptive or belligerent or whatever. They don't feel as if they're being supported in their chosen profession, when the child can come back the very next day and do the very same thing that was a transgression.
So part of retention for you would be having the parent being accountable for their child's behavior.
Exactly.
Okay.
But let me emphasize this one point. Accountability comes in a variety of different ways, okay? I find it very difficult to understand how a parent can be accountable for a child that does what a child does, and then that parent end up getting jail time. Okay,
but that's kind of going away from off the topic, which
Yeah,
is
I understand.
how. So it's kind of, let's stick with the topic
But-
because I don't want to have to put you out.
But my point is that in order to retain good teachers, we must at least deal with the child at home first. because the child coming out not having any discipline, it makes the teacher's job almost incredibly impossible, because the child is not listening to what is being taught to them at that time. So then when it's a struggle, it starts to begin to play on that teacher's ability and her or his well-being in what chosen profession that they have, and they want to feel like they've accomplished something, but you can't accomplish anything when the child is not paying any attention. And when those test scores come out, and they're really low, it makes the teacher feel as if they haven't really stepped up to the plate and delivered for their child. But again, the teacher has a hurdle to climb over, and that begins at home.
Okay.
Okay, so can you repeat your question? Sorry.
So the question is, how can we recruit and retain educators?
How can we recruit and retain educators? That air. Okay, so how can we recruit and retain educators? I think we just, like I said, we start early. Maybe I was just trying to riff on what he was saying earlier about with the parents, and I'm just wondering, what if there's more teachers for parents, because if the parents don't know how to parent, then that's an obvious flaw in the system.
That's understandable, your reply to that, but here's the thing. When you have a lot of government involvement in the way that you rear your child, it makes the situation more confusing than it needs to be. Okay? And then it doesn't have to be in all circles, just a few of them, okay? Because we only have a few bad apples that really make the situation look worse than what it really is. But when you have a few bad apples that refuse to I guess you can say, heed to authority, then what happens is that individual, referring to the child, begins to become more belligerent over time, because there's no structure there in order to guide them in a proper manner. I mean, you can even go as far as to look at this as, our society as a whole. The more that the legal system pulls back from transgressors, the more the transgressors transgress. You understand what I'm saying? Please continue.
So we just have been rejoined by Ben Todd, and I'm going to pose this same question to you, which is, how can we recruit and retain educators?
Educators in Detroit?
In Michigan.
In Michigan?
Across, yes.
I mean, I don't know if it's as complicated as people make it out to be. I mean, it's more than money necessarily. That definitely is true for many. Generally speaking, the people I know who are educators don't go into the field for money, but paying them well helps. It definitely helps. I know a lot of educators, though, who chose to work for private schools for less money because of the fact that you deal with a more stable environment. And they'll say, well, kids are paying attention to what I have to say. And so that becomes an issue as well. I think classroom size can probably play quite a role with regards to that. It's harder for people to learn, studies show. It's harder for people to learn in larger settings. And I just think, generally speaking, just being in a decent facility, in a nice school, in terms of like the structure of the building helps. And I think just having the fundamentals down. I don't think it's necessarily rocket science. I think it's pretty straightforward. If you just get the fundamentals down, you make sure education is adequately funded, and you make sure that you have a system that, while if it is adequately funded, because Detroit Public Schools actually receive, at least last time I checked a year ago, or a year and a half ago, I should say, they receive like the fourth most money per pupil out of any school system in America. But there's just a lot of problems. People don't know where the money's going. And I mean,
I would like to address that if I can.
Yeah.
If I may. the one problem that we've had is that, as far as the educational system is concerned, in my opinion, is that we continually throw money at the problem, and that never solves the problem. It actually encourages the problem to become worse, because under certain leadership, just like you said, we don't know where that money's going. But when you have the opportunity to have what is commonly known as school's choice, I guess, what happens then is that you put the competition onto the public schools, making them become better at what they do. Now, in order to retain good teachers, again, I say the environment matters more than anything else, because if there's a hostile environment for that teacher, they don't feel as if they've accomplished what they set out to accomplish, educating our young youth. And if anything, I believe that you should address that, the home situation, in order to maintain, retain, and get other teachers that will just actually go in wholeheartedly and do what they were paid to do.
Okay. So this next question comes from Anita T, and she would like to know is, how would you classify, and this is for each of you all on the panel right now, how would you classify white supremacy groups and or hate groups?
Who would like to go first?
Classify.
How do you classify?
Yeah, how do you classify them?
What type of classification? I mean, what's the levels we have to work with here? Because I classify them as bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think is she kind of trying to ask, like, what's the criteria for determining if a group is a white supremacist group?
That was
I don't. She said classify. So when we say classify, I think she wants to know, what would you label them as? What category would you put them in?
I myself will put them in the American hating category.
Okay.
Because as Americans, that's totally antithetical to what we're supposed to believe in. Unity, the Constitution, a fair shake for everyone. And if you're a white supremacist, a Klan member, Proud Boys, whatever they call themselves to this very day, your goal is to suppress another race's rights, okay, or another individual's rights, whatever it may be. It could be the LGBTQ community, or it could be the black community, it could be the Jewish community, whatever community it is. If you are into white supremacy, that means that you believe that your race is supreme above all else. And the way I understand it, we were all created equal. So I really can't classify that as nothing but just a hate group.
Okay, what about you, Todd?
I mean, hate group. I mean, there's no intellectual argument for any kind of racism. It's always just based on this anger and hatred. So, I mean, I don't even know how to classify. Yeah.
I guess what I would I would classify that maybe as a challenge. I think that it's very important to refute claims of white supremacy by any and all means, and show that all races have an incredible intellectual capacity. I mean, like, just look at in third world African countries, they're finding mathematical geniuses and making sure that they get into Harvard or Yale, Ivy League colleges, to make sure that they can become the best at their field and make advancements for all mankind.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so this is a two-pronged question. I didn't realize that she sent in another one, but she wants to know, the Black Lives Matter movement has been classified as a racist group that practices reverse racism. So what are your thoughts on that? And we're going to start with, of course, I'm going to start with you, Ben.
So you're saying, would I classify Black Lives Matter?
What are your thoughts on if they are a racist group, or if this movement is reverse racism?
From what I've seen in the movement, no, of course not. But there's a lot of effort that's been done to try to smear them. I know technically the group at its core if you look on their website, they say they're a communist organization. They're more radical than the typical group. I mean, it's definitely on the left of center spectrum. But in terms of what they advocate for and what most people who have been in the movement advocate for, they just advocate for equality. And they're tired of seeing these types of instances with the police happen. And yeah, they want change. And it's very frustrating that it still occurs. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how it could be considered reverse racism. I don't know.
Okay.
I definitely don't consider any sort of race. They have not been racist to me. Okay, when I was at Standing Rock, they were in charge of teaching us nonviolent techniques, the same techniques that the civil rights movement used to sit in at the lunch counters back in the '60s and stuff. And they just basically told us when to be stiff so that they couldn't push us out of the way. And when to be limp so that we were just total dead weight if in the case of an arrest or something, where they would really have to, if they really wanted to get us out of there, they would really have to work up some sweat doing so. And yeah, that was yeah, I don't consider them racist. They're just seeing this big need. I mean, like you see these videos that are happening, and we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of What's Going On, Marvin Gaye recording that song, and it's Don't Punish Me with Brutality. Why are we still talking about this 50 years later, really?
Good point.
So, yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, and that's sad. But yeah, if we address the issues one at a time, maybe we can come to an answer. And if we can come to an answer, maybe maybe we'll have solutions.
Okay.
Well, being the only black man on the panel, I'm quite sure you gentlemen might find my answer quite a bit surprising. I do consider them a racist organization because, one, they're openly espousing that they are a Marxist organization, which is totally contrary to what the Constitution stands for. That's one. Number two, anytime you want to destroy the nuclear family, you're not really for America, because our strength comes from our families, from the nuclear family as a whole. Number three, in my humble opinion, they may not be the Klan, but they're getting close to it. The reason I say that is because my Caucasian brothers, look, if there's an organization that tells you that you're not as good as I am, or that you are beneath me, then again, what is the difference between them and the Klan if they want to destroy one race over another, or emphasize one race over another?
I don't think that's their purpose, and I don't think that's even within their mission statement.
Wait,
so I'm going to go on to the next question. I'm moving on to the next question, which is about the Electoral College. And I'm going to pose this to everyone that's here on the panel. Do you all think that the Electoral College is reliable and a valid system? And I'm start with you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it was important in terms of being a Michigander in this election cycle. Our vote counts more than ever, and we know it, and we feel important. And I do feel like 4 years ago, we were basically ignored. The Democratic candidate for president had spoken in Detroit on Labor Day to start off the fall campaign since at least Kennedy. And that was until Hillary Clinton decided to skip out on town 4 years ago. And we saw the consequences of that. This is the biggest union city on union's biggest holiday, Labor Day, the work of the common man. And we were totally ignored until the last minute. and I was just this close, within arm's reach, of being able to give one of my Standing Rock postcards to Hillary Clinton. It ended up falling onto the Eastern Market floor. And
So
getting stepped on.
your answer was yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
The Electoral College is important because it allows even the smallest state, the less populated states, to have a voice in our elections. So to eliminate the Electoral College, like a lot of Democrats have been talking about, means that our president will be chosen by California, New York, and maybe possibly Illinois, because these are high population areas. If you notice that in every election cycle, just like with Hillary Clinton, she won the popular vote, but she didn't win the Electoral College, because that allows each state to be heard in the way that it's meant to be heard. The founders decided that this system would be best so that there's no, I guess you would say, opportunity for one side or the other to gain advantage. So yes, I support the Electoral College.
I can see why people support the Electoral College. I don't in certain regards. I don't know also, though, on the other end, how practical it would be to have a straight popular vote election, because inevitably when you're counting over 300 million votes, or maybe not 300 million, it's about like, what, 150, 160?
Yeah.
There's probably going to be a few ballots that might not get counted. I mean, statistically speaking, that wouldn't seem very improbable. But with that being said, why is it fair, and just speaking in terms of fairness, that your vote means more if you live in Michigan for the president versus somebody that lives in California? I mean, president is president of everyone. It's not just president of Ohio or Michigan or Pennsylvania. And yet they have all the power. They have the bargaining power. And so when a president forms their agenda too, they have to go out of their way to appease these states with smaller populations, yet all our resources and tax money go in equally. Money might be spent in many regards to certain states, or might be given disproportionately as a way of these presidential candidates winning re-election. And that's very unfair. And as a result, I don't support that.
okay. Now, what are you all's thoughts on universal health care? I'm going to start with
Universal health care is one step closer to socialized medicine, if you ask me. It doesn't benefit the individual or the nation as a whole when rationing could be applied, or long lines to have procedures take place. What I'm saying is not that I don't feel that every individual in this country should not have health care or have it be even a right to have health care. But socialized medicine doesn't work. It's been proven even in Canada. Some procedures they have to wait for, they even come here because they don't want to wait for long lines. They don't want to have to deal with rationing or anything of that nature when it comes to a surgical procedure taking place. Now, I understand that the country as a whole is pretty large with 300 plus million people, okay? But the price tag attached to that, it doesn't go with our economy. And if we're really going to be honest with ourselves about it, you know, when they issued in Obamacare, it made situations worse. Even if they were calling themselves making situations better, it made it worse because you had people that were, you know, had insurance through their jobs. They probably weren't paying as much. I was one of those people. But once Obamacare was instituted,
Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act. Once it was instituted, my premiums went up. You know, the idea that I could keep my doctor and keep my insurance went straight out the door. So if you're going to institute a socialized medicine type of structure for the United States, it has to be fair enough to where it is manageable. It has to be able to cover all the individuals in the country and still be within the price range that the country can bear. But I don't see that.
Are you for it or against it? Because it sounds like if there's certain things that are in play and it's fair, that you are for universal health care.
But here's the thing about it.
Yes or no?
It has to be, yes, I'm for it if it's economically feasible.
Oh, right. Next.
Okay, I'm for it, especially after hearing on NPR's Planet Money podcast last week. They spoke with somebody who was a lobbyist for the insurance companies, and he's totally flipped. He changed his mind. He found he was trying to sell a lie for years, telling us about weights in Canada and stuff, and they were just cherry picking the data, cherry picking visual examples that they can use and say, hey, this is socialized medicine in Canada, and it's bad. And he's once somebody passed away, this one person, he totally changed his mind because he figured he might have murdered this person for over the inability to provide her health care. And Canada does a lot of things. I've actually been over there and had different things done, and at a reasonable price. And
so you actually left the United States to go get treatment in
I was
another
just-
country because it was cheaper?
No. I was just across the river, and
Okay.
I'm like, oh, acupuncture, and it's like, and it would have been free if I was Canadian, but I'm not, and it only cost me what, $35, not even, or something. So I thought that was quite reasonable.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking that let's go all the way, because what he was saying about the Obamacare, the problems with Obamacare
Affordable
was
Care Act.
the Affordable Care Act was that it was a compromise trying to keep the insurance companies involved, and because they were still involved, they were able to muck it up just like they tried to do, because that's how they make their money. So if that's actually an optimal system where they can find advantages in the marketplace, let's get the socialized medicine and then see what they can do at that point to improve on it.
Okay, so let's hear your response.
I have a few thoughts on this. First off, rationing. It's a lot. It's said a lot. If there is rationing because of universal health care, that means there already was rationing beforehand. It's based on how much money you can afford. And so that's rationing too. And I find that perverse in a way. Also, I don't think there really is rationing. We have a healthcare system that is the most inefficient in the world by far. We spend over 20% of our healthcare costs on administrative costs, where like Germany spends 6%. Germany has universal healthcare. You look at Canada, for example. Canada, you can. They probably have one of the worst healthcare systems in the world, and yet theirs is better than us. People live longer in Canada. They live longer. I would think a healthcare system really might determine how long you live. And so if you're living longer in Canada, granted, there's probably better fitness measures that are taking place. I would imagine maybe people might eat a better diet in Canada than they do in the United States and things like that. But I would think the average age of life could play an impact in that. And the United States has a really actually poor life expectancy compared to the rest of the world. You also compare how much we spend. Last time I checked, I think it's like $9,000 per person the United States spends on healthcare. It's half that in other countries. So we're spending more, we're getting less, and yet we thump our chest, we say we have the best healthcare system in the world because we have the best doctors in the world. And yeah, we have the best doctors in the world. That's great. We have the greatest medical technology, but we have a horrible healthcare system. It's absolutely terrible. And so there are many ways to fix it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get away or go completely away from health insurance. There are good things about health insurance, especially now. There's a lot of preventative care that is being put in place. I know this. I personally work as a financial analyst for a health insurance company. And so there are many innovative ways that health insurance is actually helping people improve their fitness and trying to get them to take preventative measures so that the health insurance company doesn't spend as much as they otherwise would have to. But I do think that everybody needs to be covered universally. It doesn't necessarily mean we all have to have the government pay for all of our health care, but we need to make sure that everybody can afford it. And I think the people say healthcare is a human right. Well, human rights are whatever you decide it to be, but it should be probably like everybody should have access to healthcare, especially in a country as rich as ours.
Okay. So moving on to the next question, do you all think the police department should be defunded? And I'm going to start in the middle and then go to Ben and then in here.
Yeah, I kind of had a while to think about this because they've been asking that a lot about the campus police. And from what I see, it's more about engaging a talking point. Certainly there are things that should be defunded. The big overkill budgets that were made possible by the Patriot Act, where you can cause permanent hearing loss or something through a police vehicle, and the riot gear and stuff. Okay. I've got to wrap this up. Yeah. So it's okay. So there's certain things that because it's in the budget, people fill out the budget, and that should be eliminated. I think in terms of the effectiveness, retraining and redistributing police services, or what we call police for, we call them for everything, 911 for everything, and they respond. And police only know how to respond with their gun if they have to respond with their gun or an arrest, I think better mental health care and other resources.
So yes to or no to defunding the police department?
Total, yeah. That's where it's hard, is to be a total yes or total no.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna move to Dan.
I think what you mean, not like defund, like $0. You mean like reduction in funding, right?
Yes.
Like,
Okay.
and I mean that depends. We definitely have a mess. The United States Police, they overstep their boundaries. They have military level weaponry that they're able to use. They literally take tanks and things like that, military armor that is no longer used in Iraq, and we sell them to police forces in America. And so we have too much weaponry. Police aren't that accountable, or at least not as accountable as they should be. And then you have all these examples of incidences that are happening across America where there's police brutality. Mm-hmm. And police brutality happens to everyone. It happens disproportionately maybe to black people, but it happens to a lot of people. And police overstep their bounds. There needs to be something done because it's absolutely gotten out of control. I don't know if defunding is the answer, but I think maybe getting a higher quality of typical officer could be an answer. That could be paying them more. You might get a better type of candidate.
Okay, let me ask.
Well, my short answer is no, and my long answer is hell no.
Okay.
We should not defund the police, really, because it directly affects one community more than any other community, the black community. We're the ones that put in anywhere between 65 to 75% of the calls to the police. And if we can't get service at that time, that becomes an issue. Now,
but some would say we're already not getting services in an appropriate time.
If you want to defund the police, if you think you're not getting services, defund the police and see how much service you get.
That's a valid point.
The average police response time in Detroit outside of the Silk Stocking District is like over an hour.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and that's not good.
I admit that much is true, but I've stayed in other areas around the city, okay? And I'm going to say, yeah, it's pretty shabby, the, time that they take to get to you. But call East Point. Before you hang up the phone, they're already at your house. Call St. Clair Shores. Before you hang up the phone, they're already at your house. All right? This is not something that is isolated to just one area, okay? Because all around Detroit, their response times are greatly good, okay? They got some, they on the job. But you have to understand that inside of the city of Detroit, from my opinion, there is something systematically wrong with the response times from the Detroit Police Department. Not saying that they're not out there doing their best. Not saying that they're not, don't have enough guys on the beat. But to defund them, any police department, that is really taking a step beyond addressing reform. If you want to reform the police department, that's great. That's good. You don't have to defund them to reform them. And you can't send an officer of the law. Remember, key word, law. When you call the police, you're calling the police for a transgression that has taken place that probably is illegal, correct?
Yeah.
Now, if that be the case, explain to me why.
Real quick.
Okay.
We've just been joined by Mike, and I'm going to have him also join this conversation and answer the question. So if you want to jump in, you hear somebody saying anything, Mike, about defunding the police department, by all means, go in, join into the conversation. And if we have any callers out here that are listening and you want to join into the conversation, call in to 313-355-6018. Again, that number is 313-355-6018.
And I'm going to finish my thought here.
Yes.
Now, with defunding the police, okay, like I was saying, you end up, like I say, there's cause and effect. You can take the money that you're talking about defunding the police by and re-educate those policemen. Because you cannot call an officer of the law out to deal with a medical issue, such as mental illness. When you have a person that's there dealing with mental illness inside of their families, and this person has an episode, most of the time they call the police thinking that the police can,
come and calm them down,
But what happens is it goes the other way. And then the individual that ends up calling the police to help ends up feeling bad because now their loved one might be potentially killed or really hurt bad. I've never understood why, if we have this situation where we have a lot of mental illness in this country, could I understand why the ambulances don't come out before the police comes out? Because if the ambulance comes, sees that this person is violent, then they can call for support from the police. But instead, we call the police kills the individual, and then the ambulance shows up. That's backwards thinking.
What are your thoughts, Mike?
Jim.
Jim, I'm sorry, Jim.
That's okay. I will say, one thing that struck me in the conversation was people were talking about service, and then we start talking about response time. That's two different things. Response time is response time. Service is what actually happens when you have your transaction with the police. I don't believe that the police are a bad group of people or anything like that. But as far as defunding police, the short answer is no, I don't think it is. I think we should fund the police more. And what do I mean by that? Again, no shots fired. Anybody who's willing to take $38,000 a year to risk their life daily, what does that say? That usually means you were in a desperate situation. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of policemen who, hey, I want to serve my community. The pay sucks, but I want to be of service. But a lot of people take the job because they need a job. But answer this question for me. What do you think police transactions and interactions would be like if every cop made $70,000 a year? Who goes after $70,000 a year jobs? I mean, really. Let's think about it. Who goes after $70,000? Because the thing is, if you have a certain background, a certain level of education, or whatever the case may be, you go on them job sites and you look at certain jobs and go, that ain't for me. I can't get that. But if police are making $70,000 a year, and I'm, again, round number, whatever you got to work out, I think those are going to be jobs that people are going to pursue, and you're going to get a better caliber of person who pursues it.
Yeah.
But with that, I think we get real stingy with money about the wrong things. So here's the thing. The mayor can come through in 27 Yukons all tricked out like the Secret Service. But then when it comes time to say, let's put a social worker in every precinct on every shift. Oh, man, well, it's kind of tight around here right now. No. So when people say defund the police, I do think that's the wrong answer, because the bottom line is you have to spend money to get a quality service. And that's why it goes back to when you say, what is the service level of police? When you spend money at certain places, you expect certain things. So when you go to eat dinner at the Whitney, you expect the Whitney experience. When you go eat at Five Guys, you expect the Five Guys experience. What's the difference? $300.
All right. So let me just have you all state your political affiliation. I'm going to start right in front of me.
I'm Democrat typically. There's local elections where sometimes I'll vote for a Republican, depending on the issue at hand. But nationally, I'm Democrat, and yeah.
I'm a registered independent, and I'm lean Democrat.
Oh, totally conservative.
Okay. So let me ask you all this question. What are your thoughts about the LGBT community? Is this a population that needs protecting, or is there too much credence given to this movement right now? And I'm going to start here.
Well, as the LGBTQ community stands, look, I don't necessarily agree with their argument stating that, you know, their movement is equal to civil rights. Okay, that's just me. Because when I look at what Martin Luther King went through and all the other black leaders at that time fighting for their civil rights, all they did was make it easier for anyone else to be acknowledged, to have their rights. So I don't think a preference is something that should be held in high esteem as far as like your civil rights. But as far as a person being able to choose who they love, marry who they love, and so on and so forth, yeah, of course, they should be able to do and be afforded all the rights in this country everyone else is afforded. But I don't think that they should emphasize their preference more so to obtain any higher position, no more than me being heterosexual.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you keep saying a preference as if, I mean, I don't know your background, if you have a medical background, but we can't speak to say that someone has a sexual preference as to how they're born or how if their sexuality is indeed a preference or if it's a genetic trait. We just don't.
That recently has become an issue because just like with the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation, okay? Mm-hmm. Before this became an issue,
before what became an issue?
Before the preference statement became an issue, there was always an acknowledgement of a preference. This is even in the Democrat circles as well as in conservative circles. But now it's changed around to where you can't even say it's a preference. Okay, it's got to be this. It's got to be that.
Well, I didn't say it has to be. I said that we. And when I say we, I mean you or I aren't in a position to make a medical statement because we're not medical doctors. Right. So if that is a argument happening within the medical community, I think we should leave that to the community, not for us to say.
But that's just like climate warming hasn't been confirmed one way or the other.
I'm sorry, has what?
Just like climate warming, environmental warming. They say the consensus is in, but you still have scientists and doctors that say that we're not the 100% cause of global warming.
And while I'm in agreement with you, we are agreeing at the same thing. I'm saying that neither one of us are in a position to emphatically say that this is a preference, nor are either of us in a position to emphatically and factually say climate change is real because we're not experts on that matter. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. But when you use the word preference, it had been established for over the course of time that there's a preference, or you prefer not to, or you prefer to. Now, because of other, so you could say politically correct or whatever. But then,
but here's the thing: it was established until 18 whatever that blacks were inferior to whites.
Exactly.
So we can't go off that. We have to go off of scientific data. We can't just say, well, since it was previously agreed upon, because this is a subculture that we don't understand, I'm going to go with the previous consensus. The previous consensus is not accurate, or it may be accurate, or we can just honestly say we don't know because we don't.
Well, that's true.
That's all I'm saying. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt your point, but we keep saying preference as if we can just say this is a preference. We don't know that to be true.
Okay. Well,
so let's have Ben chime in here. He's been kind of quiet.
Yeah, to be honest, the question's pretty open-ended. I believe gay people have equal rights and deserve equal protection under the law to marry who they want, to not be discriminated against when applying for a job, things like that. I mean, I think those are pretty basic rights that people should have overall. So yeah, I support that.
Okay, now you had another point that you wanted to make.
I just found it a little different that this became referring to the LGBTQ community, that this became an issue of civil rights when those rights were already established in the first place for them.
I see someone shaking their head.
Well, I mean, I just feel like those rights were already established for them, because after we went through the issue about the sanctity of marriage, and that got blown out, and they were able to marry and receive the benefits of their spouses, the argument should be done. You know what I'm saying? Because it's obvious that we are on the same level. It's just, I don't think, as the gentleman to my left was saying, preference, I don't think that should be the catalyst to move an individual or a society in one way or the other. It should be neutral. It shouldn't have anything to do with anything. It should be just that individual being judged for their character and the content of it. If your bedroom behavior is a part of that, then I don't understand that. I don't understand how your sexual behavior or sexual orientation becomes an issue and something that should not be an issue.
Okay, so I'm go ahead, and then I'm going to move on to the next point.
I mean, my simple answer to the question is, if you are a homosexual, if you're transgender, queer, however you identify, if you're a citizen of the United States, you are entitled to the protections of the Constitution, each amendment that comes with it. Exactly. I think and I think we're in agreement on that. I think the problem is there's certain corners of this country where it is okay to discriminate against certain groups of people, and that's just the fact of the matter. So I don't feel like you should say, as a homosexual, you get a special protection.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you fall victim to a civil rights violation as an American, that civil rights laws need to be enforced. So if you are a United States citizen and I discriminate against you unfairly, and I discriminate in direct contradiction to the civil rights laws on the books, you need to be prosecuted. So I guess the question to me is more so, should LGBT be a protected class? And I guess my answer to that in short would be, there should be no such thing as a protected class, period.
Exactly.
Me personally, if you are a citizen of the United States, you fall under the rights and protections of the Constitution.
I agree.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to jump to a different area and ask you all, what are some of the issues that you see returning citizens are faced with, and what can you do to resolve that particular issue? So I'm going to ask you each to give me maybe one or two challenges and to provide a plan to resolve that particular issue. And I'm going to start right here in the middle.
I think the two biggest issues that I see when I work with returning citizens actually is employment opportunity and honestly rejoining their community and their families. Because especially if you did some serious time, 10, 15, 20 years, your family, your community looks totally different. Think of Detroit 25 years ago. Think of the family structure 25 years ago. So when you come back, you really are fighting a good fight as far as what does a family even look like anymore compared to 25 years ago? It's a whole nother game. I mean, it's just being real. And then a certain skill set. I mean, if we're rehabilitating people, we have to do some type of training, whether it be while they are there or when they come home. There has to be availability to stop people from becoming repeat offenders.
Okay, and then I'm going to move this way and in.
Okay, so the two biggest challenges they face, I would imagine, employment's number one. It's really hard to survive without a decent job, and in order to make a living, I would imagine that'd be very challenging. So as a result, I think that would be probably the biggest challenge and the greatest barrier. The other barrier, I mean, be honest, I'm not a great expert on this subject, and so I don't necessarily know what the other barriers would be. But I think I don't know. I would imagine just being able to rehabilitate yourself back into society.
So reintegrating back into society. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what would you do to resolve those two issues?
I mean, I know there are right now opportunities for felons and ex-felons to receive work. I think promotion of those programs, maybe government sponsorship of those programs, trying to make sure that every person gets a job after leaving prison, that would really help the situation. And yeah, I think that would that would be what I would say.
Okay. And last but not least,
two of the most difficult obstacles to being reintegrated into society is to find, one, your niche, and number two, to really struggle to stay in society.
So those are two of the challenges.
Yeah, to not become a repeat, offender, and to have a structure that allows you not to become a repeat offender. See, a lot of times when these guys come out of prison, I understand the job situation and all like that, but this also becomes a mental issue, because what you have to understand is if you've been in prison for 20, 30, 40 years, that has a
even a day.
Yeah. If you're not used to being locked up. But if you've been in prison for a number of years, that does have an effect on your mental stability. The things you've seen, the people you deal with, and all these other things. And now you have to come back into society and prepare yourself to deal with a totally different environment, completely different from what you've been dealing with for years. Now, I myself believe that the right amount of counseling, along with the support mechanism that is actually necessary for these people to be productive once they re-enter society, is an imperative point. You have to have these things, or not, they'll be repeat offenders.
Okay.
Or they could end up getting themselves hurt, trying to do something maybe they didn't have no business doing. But the bottom line is, the legal system separating these people from what they've taught them, so to speak, for years, is just as cruel as them having to go into prison for whatever they did. So you're taking one cruel issue and then compounding it with another cruel issue, and a lot of these people really don't have any understanding of how to deal with this situation. Some of them are undereducated, so you're not going into prison if you from Harvard unless you chasing money down, money laundering or something like that. You're not a white collar criminal. But the point being is that
them some of the biggest criminals.
But the point is that these people have to have a structure, a support mechanism, in order to make sure that they are productive members of society.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. So we are in the midst of our election cycle. We are 2 days away.
Yes,
from the election, and we have two candidates. I want you each to discuss the pros and cons of each candidate. So, who wants to start this one? I'm not even gonna pick. I'm gonna let you all decide. I have a hand raised. All right, Jim, let's go.
So, if we want to do pros, we'll start with President Trump, just to get him out the way. I think the pros of President Trump, the biggest thing that President Trump has done successfully, in my opinion, is actually his foreign policy. President Trump, for the first president in my lifetime who has not launched a foreign incursion, period. And I'm 37. I know I look good right now. Anyway, I'm kidding, but no.
Not to toot your own horn, right?
Exactly. But no, honestly,
I should have a buzzer. Be like, wrong answer.
But no, I mean, in my lifetime, this is the first president to never launch a foreign incursion. And to me personally, like I said, I'm an independent-leaning guy. I don't feel that the American military needs to be all over the world. That's just me personally, and I'm a fan of it. Again, I feel that his policies, especially with Israel, as far as just a new approach. I'm not saying that the Israel-Palestine issue doesn't need to be resolved and addressed, but I am saying that Israel's still a country, and there's still other countries with issues, and he was able to bring a lot of those people to the table. And I think those are the pros. I think the cons are the domestic agenda is really reminiscent of kind of a Reaganomics ideology of trickle-down economics. The money at the top comes down. And trickle-down economics, I'm not going to say is a complete failure, because it's not. But it's something that takes time. And we don't have that kind of time right now. We do need a certain level of government intervention on the things that the government is supposed to do. I remember campaign Trump told me we were going to have an infrastructure package. I'm waiting on that package. And people, please don't come to me and say, but he got a Democratic Congress. Because I'm going to tell you the one thing this Democratic Congress was able to do. They was able to spend money. I watched $3 trillion go out in a week and a half. We saw it.
Yes, we did.
Can anybody here count to $1 trillion? I sure can't. Mm-hmm. So it's certain domestic things where I'm not the person who's going to get hung up on. He tweets this and he says that. People say bad things all the time. I don't care, honestly. But what I will focus on is what have you done domestically. You have not done anything that has had a stronger impact on the middle class and lower middle class and impoverished that I feel that you could have done. Now, a lot of people are going to counter that and say, well, look at the manufacturing boom, look at the manufacturing growth. And not really. The manufacturing changes and growths that did come along with it were not only a carryover from the previous administration, but they were also things that kind of fell into place based on other policies that were already happening. So,
and a lot of it came from California.
A lot of the manufacturing that happened here in Michigan was things that were set in place, whether you want to call it Snyder, Whitmer, whoever. Again, these things were in place. Ford doesn't build a factory in 2 years, in 3 years, in a year. The Ford model is stretched out for 10, 15, 20 years. Now, contrast that to the vice president. I think the biggest positive about the vice president's agenda right now is that it is seeking to do direct investment. We spend so much money in so many wrong places. So I get it. Conservatives will say, cut the fat, let's quit spending this money. I'm saying that everybody is guilty. Trump blew the budget out. George W. Bush blew the budget out. The last conservative who didn't blow the budget out was Ronald Reagan. And that's because he waited till the end and then let the next dude blow it out.
We ran really good large deficits with Reagan.
Well, there you have it. So, yeah. But my point is, if we're going to spend some money, we need to invest it in people who are actually going to feel it. And then once that investment happens, we will continue to grow, and people will spend money. And that our economy is consumer based. Our economy has been closed since March, and you gave people $1,200, and you wonder why the economy went stagnant. Who bought something big? I know I didn't. And I'm still working, but I'm looking around and I'm going, I don't know what's about to happen. The government been telling me they got something coming for me. That didn't happen. So it stalled out. So again, I think my biggest thing with the Vice President Biden, is that he's willing to invest in communities and then people within the United States. So that's where I stand, and that's why he has my support.
And Khan,
I do feel that on the healthcare issue, you can't flirt with it. You're trying to get a little pregnant. You're either bringing all the people Medicare for all, you're either giving all the people healthcare, or you're not. I'm not a fan of this. We're going to keep insurance, but we're not going to keep it, et cetera, et cetera. No. We're either doing it or we're not. So on that, and again, I'm not going to say necessarily if I'm for or against. I'm kind of, because I have private insurance. I enjoy it. But again, you're going to inadvertently impact my private insurance by doing this half and half. Because now you're going to either drive up the cost to the point where it's unaffordable for me, or you're going to drive it down to where the insurance company's going to go, you know what?
It's not
worth it no more. So I just like to know what I'm getting.
Okay.
Well, my pro and con.
First, let's start with Biden. Your pro with him.
My pro with Biden is, well, I guess he sticks around for a long time. 46 years.
He's loyal. You say that, okay.
He's got staying power. I give him that much.
Okay.
That's his pro. My con with him is that his first His first reaction to solve a problem is to raise your taxes. Now, if we're going to be honest about it, and this man is running for president, and we're coming basically out of a recession due to Corona, and we had a 33.1% GDP. Now, within inside of that numbers, within inside of 33.1.
What?
there-
33.1 what?
GDP.
What do you mean? Oh,
Gross domestic product. Yeah.
increase
Yeah.
from like
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to
now-
break it down. Everybody that's listening may not understand what those acronyms mean.
33.1 gross domestic product. Within inside of those is what's inside that 33.1. There are other aspects such as automobile production and so on and so forth. So that means that within that number,
You taking
the
a long
economy-
time to tell me
I'm
about
sorry.
some pros and
The
cons.
economy grew. Okay.
Okay.
From zero. Okay. Now that's
it grew.
Oh, sorry.
It declined by 35%.
yes.
and so
exactly.
it went down to
But-
33%.
But here's the thing.
Well,
here's
yeah,
the
that's
thing.
not
Here's
that
the thing.
good.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Now let me get back to my point. If the economy grew to 33.1% first time in history of this country,
Well,
how do you expect in a recovery to throw $4 trillion in taxes on top of this and continue having a recovery? Because that is exactly what Joe Biden said he wanted to do. But let's be honest, he did say that he's not going to charge anyone that's making over 400 or is it 300?
Less than $400,000.
Okay, less than $400,000 they won't see a penny in taxes.
In taxes.
But here's the, I guess you say the underlay. When you tax corporations and businesses, those corporations and businesses do not absorb that tax. They pass it down to the consumer. So you have a shadow tax taking place.
Okay. So
Behind
what
the
are your
scenes.
pros with Trump?
My pros with Trump is that being a businessman, he understands that there are certain levels you can go and certain levels you can't go. Now, being that he has reached to those points and has accomplished so much in his time within those 3.5 years, okay? Referring to his foreign policy, referring to his economic policy, as well as being able to listen to individuals that bring him ideas, such as Ice Cube came to him with a platinum plan. Now, Ice Cube also took that same, plan to Biden, and Biden told him, we'll talk about it after election. But that's not what Trump's excuse me, that's not what the Trump administration did.
But who was
They
Ice
came
Cube?
They came.
I'm sorry.
He is no.
No,
Hold on.
I want to tell you where I'm coming from because
go
I
ahead,
don't
because I want to hear this.
Why is it as black people?
Yeah.
Dan, you gotta sit this one out. I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Why is it as black people all of a sudden people ordain who our community leaders are, and they always seem to be comedians, singers, dancers, actors?
No.
We have thought leaders in the black
wait,
community,
You have that completely.
no,
wrong.
because here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You telling me about Ice Cube endorsed him, Lil Wayne endorsed him.
No, I'm not saying.
I'm not saying
endorsed
you.
him.
This is what I'm saying. I'm just saying this.
Right.
This is the media stories.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is we have actual thought leaders within our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hear what the Trump administration had to say to Dr. Cornel West. People who study these things. People who actually have policies that go beyond, excuse me, the facade.
Okay, so
Beyond the patina.
So if any of this makes any sense to you, then why is it that the opportunity zones were set up in order to make?
I'm gonna actually
impoverished
have to get
areas-
back to our
I'm sorry.
actual topic.
Yeah, because we were going back and forth.
Because I might have to put you two out, and I don't
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
do that.
Okay, but my pros for Trump is that he's pro-business.
Okay, and your cons.
And my con is that to be honest with you, he said a few things that made me cringe, and it's not as if he has a filter. I think he should have more of a filter on things that he says before he says them, because it does have a way of turning off the electorate. And I'm one of those individuals, and I like him for the things he does, but I'm not too crazy about some of the things he says.
Okay, and our last person.
Okay. So, I'm going to start with Trump. The pro, I viscerally dislike him. And
Thank you for your candor.
well, when I first saw him run for president and we made his announcement speech, I thought it was kind of funny. And then he said that thing about Mexicans and rapists. I'm like, what? And it seemed really weird. And he came to these rallies and he had no decent ideas. And as somebody, I work in finance, economics, he has nothing. Really dumb ideas like, we're going to shut down trade, we're going to charge tariffs. That is stupid. He had no decent economic plans whatsoever, but he was able to get people to believe in it. So I guess that is a pro. Now, cons, I do viscerally dislike him. But sometimes I think about it, and I'm like, taking away my own personal feelings, how is he done with the economy? He says it's the greatest economy in the history of this country. And so I'll ask you, what do you think good metrics are for the economy?
Well,
what do you think the best one is?
Pre-COVID, okay?
Yeah, pre-COVID.
Pre-corona. We had the lowest unemployment around. We had over 160
What do you think
million-
the most one?
Whoa.
Or most
We had
I'm
over
asking
100
one question.
We
though.
had only 100. We had 160 million Americans working at that time. One of the highest numbers ever recorded in this country.
So you think that's the most important number?
What? Full employment?
No, for
an economy.
For an economy.
For an economy, the one number you really want to look at is the debt, because that is a danger to the economy and its growth.
Well, that's what the government has, but I'm talking about an economy as a whole. The number one metric is GDP growth rate.
Yeah.
And GDP growth rate is very important. It pretty much is the overall output of this country.
Okay, so even if you use the GDP growth rate, it was anemic under the Obama administration.
But it was also anemic under the Trump administration. The average is 3%. He hasn't hit 3% any year.
Yeah, but Obama
sucks, though.
Obama hit 3% one time in his full term.
That's one more than this new guy.
Wait a minute.
It depends.
You have to go back and
Obama
go back and look at the numbers. You'll see that Trump has hit those numbers quite a few times.
Well, no.
And actually,
you just told me he didn't. I was going off your
I said Obama only hit.
He never hit 3% actually either, and that's a problem. We haven't hit 3% since 2004, and he's gotten an entire country to believe, and nobody calls him out because both Democrats with Obama and Biden and Republicans haven't been able to stimulate this economy. And if you look at it, Obama actually created a lot more jobs than Trump did. Obama's last 3 years versus Trump's first 3 years. Obama created more jobs. Trump's like, I created 6 million jobs. He didn't even create 6 million. He created 4.5. But 6 million jobs. Bill Clinton created 12 million his first term. Then he created 13 million his second term. Obama created, I think it was like 8 million. So, I mean, his numbers are meager at best. And it's more of a systemic problem. We had these huge tax cuts that just really increased the amount of debt that we incurred as a country. We didn't pay for them at all, which is just irresponsible. And you just look at the financial position. You look at the lack of new businesses that are starting up, new types of startups. There's really not that many new startups that are coming up. And I just think both sides are kind of out of ideas. But with that being said, what really frustrates me is nobody calls out this huge problem of a lack of economic growth. And that's one of the things I wanted to say about Trump was, he's done pretty much, his first 3 years are almost identical in terms of economic output in just about like any regard as Obama's. And you could say unemployment rate, but the rate is one thing. It's how many jobs you add. I mean, you could argue either way, but I mean, it's really a toss-up between him and Obama. It's not like Trump did better than Obama with regards to the economy.
Okay, so what about Biden?
So
the pros and cons for him.
The pros and cons, this is how I view it, and I viscerally dislike Donald Trump. And I know.
Can you say that one more time? Just one more time.
I just
get it out of your system.
Well,
the people in the back didn't hear you.
Like let's say for example, Biden has no ideas with the economy either. He really doesn't.
So that's a con.
Yeah, he doesn't. With that being said, this is a country that seems really damaged right now. On the world stage, to me, it appears that Donald Trump made us look like fools. I mean, I'm going to go back to the economy. He goes to the...
Are you talking about Trump or Biden now? Because I thought we were talking about Biden and his pros and cons.
Yeah, but I'm comparing it to Trump as a way to... Trump goes to United Nations, I believe, or I think it was a G8 summit, and he says, the United States has experienced an economic miracle, and everybody laughs at him. And he goes, that's not the response I expected. We're laughing because everyone knows it's not true. It's stupid. Biden's not going to do that. And I think there's going to be some respectability that is going to be brought back. And I really appreciate that. And I know he's not going to have the answers to all of our problems, but at least like with regards to COVID-19, our death rate is like the 10th worst in the world. We have the 10th worst COVID-19 death rate in the world. We have the most advanced supply chain in the world. We should be able to manufacture enough tests to get everyone tested and to prevent the spread of this. But it's not happening. It's not happening. It's really tragic. It's humiliating. And something needs to be done. And I'm not saying Biden has all the answers, but at least I think there's a core level of competency that isn't there with Trump. And Trump's micromanaging, I think, the whole process. And as a result, nothing's getting done.
Okay. So let me ask you all, what if, and we're here in Detroit, so I'm going to bring this back local. What if President Trump pardoned former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick? Would that change your view on him, or what would your stance be? Or how just overall, how would you feel about that? And I'm going to let you pick up and then go around.
Yeah, I mean, my view of Trump wouldn't change. It'd be disturbing that, I find it disturbing how many people he's pardoned. But with that being said, Kwame Kilpatrick should be pardoned. 28 years is not a reasonable sentence. I looked at, when I did a show before, we looked at corruption convictions of pretty much every mayor in America, any mayor of a big city. You'd see 3, 4, 5 years. 28. And then it's like, what did he do for 28? It wasn't much. And I know I think the reason why he got such a strict sentence was because they thought he was responsible for the murder of 2 girls on top of everything, but they couldn't prove it. But you shouldn't add on years just because of innuendo. You have to have a crime that you're charged with. And so 28 years was ridiculous. He should be pardoned. He did do wrong. There's no doubt about it. He did do wrong. But 28 years is absurd.
Okay.
Kwame Kilpatrick is in jail, and Rod Blagojevich is on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
I want y'all to let that sink in. The man who tried...
Repeat it again.
Kwame Kilpatrick is in jail, and Rod Blagojevich is on Dancing with the Stars. Now, that was the former governor of Illinois who tried to sell then Senator Obama's Senate seat. When President Obama won the presidency, Rod Blagojevich, basically put his Senate seat on the market. Say, who wants to be senator because I'm governor and I get to appoint it, and how much money you got. So I say all that to say the fact that Kwame Kilpatrick is in jail for that length of time is asinine. And so, I mean, again, you say, will it change my opinion? Honestly, no. And the only reason I say that is because you don't get brownie points for doing what's right. That's why it's called right. Yeah, I mean, you did the right thing. Appreciate it. More so, I believe the Kilpatrick family appreciates it. Moving on. You did what you were supposed to do.
I think the amount of time he got was a little excessive. Okay, but I really don't feel like he should be pardoned, because there are people that have done far worse and gotten a hell of a lot less time. Now, as far as
so wait, let me understand what you're just saying. So you said Kwame did far less than some other people, but other people have gotten way less time for things that they did that weren't as critical as Kwame. But you don't think Kwame should be pardoned?
No, I think I do believe the amount of time he got was excessive. I do believe that. But I don't think he should be pardoned. The reason I feel that way is because if anybody can remember that whole situation, and I remember a lot of it, there was some questionable parties at the Manoogian Mansion. No answers has ever been given about those. And a young lady came up dead, and nobody's ever, took responsibility for that. Now, I'm not saying that Kwame should take the responsibility for that, but somebody needs to answer for that woman's death. Now, if he came forward and said, well, I have information regarding that, and maybe we can make a deal. Then yeah, I would see that.
That's
But
extortion. That's extortion.
That's not extortion.
That's exactly what
that's
that
not
is.
extortion because there are a lot of people
Nice.
that's in prison that have made deals and got out of prison because they ratted on somebody or they knew information about
would you
something.
prefer him to lie, number one, because you have no factual evidence to say that he knows who killed this girl or whatever. That's
Okay,
number
so
one.
even if
But-
he doesn't
okay,
know,
but
if he doesn't know,
Mhm.
it still does not diminish the fact that I feel he had excessive amount of time piled on him. But it still doesn't change my feelings that
okay,
he should
so
be pardoned. Or
so
not.
here's the funny thing now. You're saying you're saying he shouldn't be pardoned, but the reasoning you're giving.
Not from a
is-
presidential.
the reasoning, but the reasoning you're
perspective.
giving is the exact reason for the pardon. The power of the pardon.
no.
Hold
You would
on,
go
let me
through-
finish. Let me
if you-
finish.
go ahead.
Let me finish. The power of the pardon is given to the president. And the power of clemency is given to the president for them to right wrongs and injustices within the justice system. It's the check and balance to the check and balance.
Okay.
So, for example, like you just said, if someone is giving an excessive sentence, the president does that. Now, as a Trump supporter, the young lady, Miss Alice Johnson, who they have put out in front of the camera since the RNC, and every commercial I've seen weeks upon weeks, you said she got this she was given too many years for a drug conviction, and he righted that
the
wrong.
The woman was given life for a nonviolent first-time offense.
And this man was given virtually life for a non-violent first-time offense.
Okay.
How many black men living to be 70 years old?
So,
And he just ate 30 when he was 50.
So, gentlemen-
50, 60, 70, 80.
so gentlemen, guess what?
We're gonna agree not to
Gentlemen,
agree on
guess
Okay.
what?
Yes, ma'am.
that. Okay.
The president pardoned Kwame. So
What?
let's end that discussion. While we were in here, I received news that the president pardoned Kwame Kilpatrick.
That's new because I haven't heard about that one either.
Well, you've been in here.
That's his way. Okay.
Well, I will be looking that one up. Okay.
So that's what I just
to
heard.
vote.
Okay.
So
Well.
that's the report that I just got
Wow.
in. So let me ask you
Wow.
guys what.
He's trying to get votes. That's what it is. Oh my God.
So let me ask you all about what are your thoughts
Wow.
on Black Lives Matters? Are they, and you already answered this question, so I'm not going to have you answer this question again. But for the two guests that are in here now, how would you compare white supremacist groups to the Black Lives Matters movement? And I'm going to start, because you answered that question too, didn't you?
What?
About Black Lives Matters and white supremacy? Okay, so I'm going to ask you, Jim.
I will say this, because now we have to remember, we have to make sure we're not dealing with the, excuse me, what I call semantic overload. So we're dealing with Black Lives Matter as an organization, not as a phraseology. So I will say this, I don't think there's any comparison as far as a white supremacy group, just because white supremacist groups focus on not only the quote unquote elevation of their race, but they also focus on the bringing down of another group of people. So in order for me to rise as a white man in my white supremacist group, I'm going to typically do that on the neck of a black man. Now, Black Lives Matter has some things organizationally that I personally just don't agree with. I know a lot of people like to throw around the whole nuclear family thing, which is a valid point because I don't agree with that. I do believe that there is a necessity for the nuclear family in the black community. But in the same breath, to compare them to terrorist or white supremacist groups is simply, there's no comparison to be made. It's a group that is seeking to have, they're seeking justice for injustices. Now, whether you agree with them doing it or not, or their methodology, that's a whole nother ball game. That's a whole other conversation. But as far as just, is that a is it a white supremacy? Is there any similarity? Absolutely not.
Okay, so we have just a few more minutes while I have you all here, and I wanted to ask you your thoughts about cancel culture.
I despise it.
Me too.
Okay, so tell me why you despise it.
Because you're ruining the free flow of ideas. people need to have conversation. I think honestly the reason the country is in the position that it is in right now is because you've had the left on one side and the right on one side, and all they've done is sit in their echo chambers and heard the very worst about the other side. So now when it's time to actually have conversations about elections and things like that, we don't even know how to have them anymore. Because for the last, honestly, and this is something that's gone back to me 10, maybe 15 years, where it's the people on the right are looking at everyone on the left and going, they're American hating baby killers. And the people on the right side of the spectrum are going, on the right side, or on the left side, excuse me, are going, where they're gun clenching, Bible thumping hillbillies. America's actually a country in the middle. We're a big nation of people who are kind of, I'm for this, but I'm not for that. I'm not a hardcore one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And now what you've done is you've made it so where if somebody says something that maybe you disagree with or you don't like, now we can't employ their ideas anymore. We can't have conversations with them anymore. And what's that going to lead to? It's just going to lead to more echo chambers, more of us just shouting back and forth and yelling at the sky like the granddad from The Simpsons. We have to actually have a conversation with people you disagree with. The brother who just left, he's a very conservative individual. We can have a conversation without cussing each other out, without jumping on each other, without saying, and that's what I'm saying. So it's other people where you hear these people who say, oh, he met with Trump, we can't even talk to him no more. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why? He had a conversation with somebody.
And to be perfectly honest, isn't that the goal of legislators, to reach across the aisle as well, to engage the other party, to help them with securing bills and making sure things pass, legislation pass? But let me go ahead to you.
Cancel culture's gone out of control. I think a lot of it has to do with social media and the fact that I think human beings, we're hardwired to be outraged for things, and we're hardwired to be very judgmental, and that's just human beings. That's how we keep our society in order, is by having like these mass judgments. And so as a result, I think we do that with a lot of media figures in particular, and it ruins creative content. It ruins just the viewing experience for others as well, and it's not optimal. So
okay.
Yeah.
And we just had Roger Pizzabini join us again, and I'm going to ask you that same question about cancel culture. What are your thoughts about that?
To be honest, I don't even have understanding of what that is. So somebody has to enlighten me.
It's where you basically, especially a lot of celebrities are, and it's more of a social thing now, I think, than a political, but it kind of crosses both lines. But so long story short, let's say Celebrity X sent out a tweet 10 years ago that was considered homophobic now. They will dig up that tweet and then be like, that person shouldn't be. You basically removing people from polite society. You shouldn't get roles anymore. You shouldn't be in movies because you're a homophobe because you were drunk and said something stupid on Twitter.
Or because you're a racist. Like how our statues are being, demolished because they were a Confederate.
Well, okay, so we talked about that earlier. Yeah. So since now I understand context what you put it in. I didn't know that term. But I said in regard to the statue thing, I personally think that every community and every person has a right to express and celebrate their history or whatever as they see it. So what I would do if I was opposed to, let's say, Robert E. Lee statue or whatever, I would put up or rally my community to put up something that represents what I feel or celebrate. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you should tear down things to try to cancel out anybody's opinion or culture or history. Just tell your own story. I think that's the problem when somebody else or one group tries to dictate the terms. I mean, if all the black people, African Americans, etc., start dictating what history is going to be, then it's going to be slanted in the other direction. To the victor goes the spoils, I guess. But so and then as far as digging up people's past, that's kind of why I wanted to do this show. Like, I have a past. If people want to hold me accountable for that, then
You have a pass,
Yeah, I
Roger.
got
Get
it.
out of
Yeah.
here.
You
No.
know, but it's about what you are doing. Everybody has a right to repent, reform, change their mind, have a change of heart. You know what was good for me in my 20s and what I did in my 20s, etc. is I'm not that guy for the rest of my life, and you know, it shouldn't be a perpetual punishment or perpetual humiliation, etc. for whether you did it deliberately, a mistake, or it was just a different time in people's life, you know. So to dig that up, to try to slander or hurt somebody that you feel threatened by, because normally when somebody poses that kind of attack, it's because they feel threatened and they want to do by any means necessary type of a strategy. So, you know, if you really are about your business and you are who you say you are at the time, you shouldn't have to resort to those types of tactics and mudslinging to stand out, you know. So I'm against it.
All
I mean,
right.
whoever's doing it. But I know we're short on time, right? So go ahead.
4 minutes.
Yeah. I wanted to invite everybody first. I personally thank everybody for coming through who participated today. I want to give a special thanks out to City Council, Ecorse City Councilman Devontae Sherrod. Because out of all the elected officials we invited, some who confirmed they were going to come, he's the only one who came. He's the only one who manned up. I had people requesting like, who's going to be in the room and where's my staff going to come and all that. So he walked
And
into this.
even wanted to dictate the conversation. Well, I'm not going to talk about this, and if this happens, then I'm just going to not come,
Right.
or I'm going to leave. It's like, oh,
And some people confirmed to be here, but when they found out the rules of engagement, different things, some of
Exactly.
them just chumped out right then and there. And I'm saying chumped out, choked out, punked out. And then some waited till the last minute to say, well, this happened. And then some didn't even bother, no call, no show. So thank you to everybody that's here, especially you guys. And the whole point
you
is,
all have been here from the very beginning. We started with you, and we're ending with you.
And
My
that,
God.
to me, that's commendable, because the whole point of this, and of course, this is our first show of this nature. I want to test the concept, because even after the election is over, life goes on. We're going to have other political issues.
Well, there's another election that'll be coming around. There'll be a local
Right.
election that comes around.
And
so.
the point from my point of view is, it's for the people, by the people, we the people. Politicians have to get away from spin, from mudslinging, from just showing up for the optic. Like, a lot of them didn't come here today because this is not a big station, and this is and their handlers maybe told them don't come. But here's the thing: it went out live on the 4 major platforms that they use otherwise. It's uncensored, so I'm more interested in that, and it's going to be archived. So there's plenty of people who will see you if you want to be seen, especially if you link to your segment and give it to your people. So you really didn't have a reason to choke out or not show most of you all. Some of them have things to do, some, especially some of our higher level politicians. And granted, it was short notice because I don't have everybody's phone number, etc. But to the ones who really just bitched out, because that's what you're about like spinning the people. To the elected officials who can't even define what the 3 branches of government are, but you hold the office. To the elected officials and the candidates who basically try to bribe the constituents and the stakeholders by hosting a chicken dinner, or whatever the bribe is that you putting down.
Don't be talking about jewelry.
No, wait a minute. Let the camera roll, because it's my station, so let it roll. But Napanji's named the name. I'm not gonna name names because I'm trying to be polite. Everybody that knows me know I don't have a problem being in a dog fight.
Well,
but
it's after 8:00, and officially I am no longer the mediator.
there you go.
So let me actually thank those who came out for the 2020 political shootout. I have been your host, your moderator rather, Dr. Napanji Thomas. Please join us on WJZZ.com so that you can stream some good live
TV.
Well, the radio station
Yeah,
too. You
I
can
was
go on
gonna
Cool
explain
TV.
that.
Well, so we have different ways that you can listen or view us. So if you want to strictly listen to us, go to WJZZradio.com and listen to us. And you can also catch our podcast on there. And then you can view us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope.
Okay, and real quick, while we close out, everybody plug your stuff one last time, starting with you, dear moderator.
Okay, you can catch me every Thursday on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest radio station on the world, from 5 to 6 p.m. on In Session with Dr. Sabi Fishta.
You know, I don't really have a plug at this time. James and I are in talks about starting something up, but yeah, we don't have, or I don't have anything to plug at the moment.
Be on the lookout for this soon to come Ebony and Ivory tandem.
Yeah.
My only plug, honestly, at this point, go vote.
Yeah.
Go vote.
And I'm going to tell you what, I know I'm not supposed to say this in bad taste or whatever. I don't even care who you vote for. But until we start voting as communities, people not going to give a shit.
Right.
Period. So if Republicans come out in numbers, the Republicans will start giving you something. If Democrats come out in numbers, the Democrats will start giving you something. But if you don't vote, ain't nobody gonna have shit for you.
And I want to say first and foremost, go vote. That was the driving factor of this show. And vote for your own best interest. Don't vote for personality cults. Don't vote hate motivated. Vote for your own best interest, because if you just get lured by whoever's putting down, at the end of the day, what's in it for you? You know, so vote, know who you're voting for, know what you're voting for, but damn, get out and vote. But, and I want to plug my stations. I want to invite Ben and whoever, if you want to have a platform for free speech, freedom of expression, regardless of what genre or what topic it is, we can probably accommodate you here.
Here on WJZZ
Cool TV, or one of our other live stream podcast shows and studios, which we have a couple others. So give me a call, and you can use this number right here, 313-355-6018. And anyway, find me, however, and we can probably get you on the air. And I thank everybody for supporting us, not only with this program, but for everything we're trying to do, because this is what this station is about, to give a platform for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and creative talent throughout Detroit, and then we'll take on the rest of the world. And so with that said, I guess that's going to wrap it up for us tonight.
All right.
All right, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming. And stay tuned every week for any of our programming on WJZZ.
Oh, wait 1 second. J.R. Williams, who was sitting in this seat, the African-American guy, the Republican, his show is Facts and Opinions every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. until 3. So I just want to plug JR. You can see him Saturday and Sunday, 2 to 3 p.m. right here on WJZZ Cool TV. And we'll be launching our business and politics station within the next 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody. Good night.